Genau. Good. How are you?
The November 20th meeting of the Scarborough Planning Board will please come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Doreen, you please call the roll.
Rick King,
Yes, here.
Jennifer Ladd. Here. Roger Beely.
Here.
Rachel Henderson.
Here.
James Hebert
Here.
and Bennett Flanders.
Here.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of October 30th. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I motion to accept the minutes from the meeting as written. Second.
And seconded, motion by Rich King, seconded by Roger Beely. There any changes, emendations, corrections, concerns, quibbles? Hearing none, please call for the vote. Doreen, please.
Rick King,
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd. Yes. Roger Beely.
Yes.
Rachel Henderson.
Yes.
James Hebert
Yes.
and Bennett Flanders. Oh, you don't vote.
No, Bennett is not voting today. Item 4.01 is a consent item. NLM Enterprises LLC is requesting a final subdivision review of a 5.84 acre, 8-lot subdivision on Chamberlain Road. The property is further identified as Assessors Map R79, Lot 14. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So NLM is back in front of the planning board after having submitted its stormwater management report. While the first review by the town's civil engineer and engineering peer review team yielded several comments, staff believes these can all be addressed via conditions of approval should the board see it fit. Similarly, notes have been added to the plan set to address the board's previous concerns regarding street trees as well as fire protection. Staff has provided the board with a draft motion of approval for consideration. And with that, I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And please recall that this is a consent item. We have reviewed this several times previously. Is the applicant content with the conditions?
We are, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. This is an item that is available for public comment. Is there any person in the room or online who would like to make a comment? No. All right, thank you. In that case, public comment period is over. I'm going to read does the board have any additional concerns? Very good. There is a draft motion, a trackside final subdivision review. I move to approve the project titled Trackside Subdivision proposed by NLM Enterprises LLC. The project is depicted in plan sets prepared by Sebago Technics dated 11/14/23. Findings: the proposal subdivides a parcel along Chamberlain Road into an 8-lot subdivision. The board finds the proposal meets the standards of the town of Scarborough zoning and subdivision ordinances. Conditions: 1, prior to the release of the signed subdivision plan for recording, the applicant shall A, address the comments in the staff memo dated 11/20/23. B, address the comments in the Haley Ward memo dated 11/15/23. C, provide 30-inch drainage easement, 30-inch or 30?
30 foot.
30 foot, that's, in case change that, please. Provide it didn't make sense. Provide a 30-foot drainage easement to the town if it is intended to be the benefactor of this easement. D, provide a performance guarantee required by Section 9 of the Town of Scarborough Subdivision Ordinance with costs based on the final plan set. E, pay traffic impact fees totaling $6,637. Oak Hill, $2,265. Hikers Parkway at Route 1, $2,970. Dunstan Corners, $1,402. 2, driveway culverts must be a minimum of 15 inches with a minimum 12-inch cover. Any changes to culvert sizing or minimum covers must be approved by the Public Works Director. This shall be reviewed by the Planning Department. 3, fire suppression for the subdivision shall meet NFPA 1, Chapter 18.4 for fire flow requirements. This shall be reviewed and approved by the Fire Department. 4, prior to the issuance, each building permit in the subdivision, the applicant shall, A, provide the town engineer a stamped plan prepared by a Maine licensed professional engineer specializing in transportation engineering, detailing the limits of clearing required to provide acceptable site distance for the lot. 5, prior to each certificate of occupancy issued in the subdivision, the applicant shall, A, conduct any required vegetation clearing as part of condition number 4A. 6, prior to the start of construction, a pre-construction meeting is required. The meeting shall include appropriate town staff, the developer, and their site contractor, and is to be coordinated through the Planning Department. All plan modifications are to be completed prior to scheduling the pre-construction meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Roger Beely. Doreen? Yes.
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 Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 4.02, Johanna Garcia is proposing to amend the Highland Avenue subdivision by splitting the existing lot at 50 Highland Avenue, assessors map R80, lot 15A. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Ms. Garcia is in front of the planning board with a lot split of an approved subdivision along Highland Avenue. Staff's outlined several items for the board's consideration and discussion with the applicant. These include possible water service connection to the adjacent Portland Water District infrastructure, as well as a plan notation for EV conduit installation for the new home, as well as street trees. A draft motion of approval has been provided to this effect for the board's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the applicant?
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Bill Garish. I'm with Northeast Civil Solutions. I'm here with Troy McDonald, also from Northeast Civil Solutions. Johanna Garcia and Abel Garcia are not here tonight. We're here representing them for the proposed subdivision amendment to the Highland Avenue subdivision. And just a little bit of background, the Highland Avenue subdivision was approved by the town back in 2002. It basically split up a parcel into, it added 4 lots to a parcel. All of those lots were about 0.55 acres. And the remaining land, which was identified as lot 1 on the plan, retained 1.69 acres with a home, a single family residence that still exists on the parcel today. So the amendment is to split the 1.69 acre parcel and add 1 more residence to that parcel. So the lot split would identify lot 1A, which would be the new residence. And that would be about a little over 22,000 square feet, where the remaining part would be lot B, and that would remain 52,000 square feet, plus or minus. So the proposal, as you see it, you see a proposed house. It's about a 1,200 square foot home. The new home is actually proposed to use the existing driveway and add on to the existing driveway. A little portion right near the boundary line, as you can see, would be removed. That pavement would be removed right there, and there would be a new driveway serving the existing home. The In addition to the 1,200 square foot driveway, there'll be new impervious area associated with the new driveway, the new house. The total new impervious area under the project would be about 0.08 acres. That factors in the small area of pavement to be removed. Utilities, supporting the new structure, would come from an on-site wastewater disposal system, which is shown right in front of the proposed house. A septic design has already been completed with an HHE 200 that was included in the application. Overhead utilities, electric and communications would be served from an existing pole on Highland Ave. And there is a proposed private well, which is in the upper left corner of the parcel. And there was a lot of discussion, I guess, in the comments with regards to water supply. There is public water in Highland Avenue. Unfortunately, it does not extend onto the proposed parcel. We worked with the Portland Water District through this process. We had proposed a service off the existing 12-inch water main in Highland Avenue. It would end up crossing the corner of Lot 1B with an easement and serve the proposed house. The Water District would not approve this configuration. Their standards were to extend the 12-inch water main to at least the center of the proposed structure, the proposed home. So that would require about 130 feet of 12-inch water main extension, a ductile iron water main, which would require construction right in Highland Avenue. And given that, you know, the cost and the disturbance of the road and so forth, to serve one home, and where it is feasible to install a private well on that property, we proposed a private well in lieu of connecting the public water main. I will note that the private well is going to require a little bit of a variance. It is only 70 feet from the proposed wastewater disposal system. This is a doable situation. It's done all the time. It can be approved. It just requires a deeper casing on the proposed well. The setback requirement can come down as low as 60 feet, depending on the depth of the casing. So in order to make this work and avoid having to extend a 12-inch water main for just one single family service, we are proposing a private well on the property. The total disturbance, and there is about a third of an acre, 0.32 acres of new lawn proposed with the project. The total disturbance is about half an acre, 0.55 acres in total. So the project does not fall subject to review under the DEP standards for a stormwater permit by rule due to the fact that it is under an acre of disturbance. The previous subdivision was not reviewed and subject to review by the DEP, and it was actually approved prior to the 2005 DEP stormwater standards. Again, the wastewater disposal system is proposed right in front of the house. It does meet the setback requirements for all facets. The septic tank is 8 feet from the house or exceeds 8 feet, which is the minimum setback. The disposal field is 20 feet from the house. The disposal field is also 10 feet from the property lines, 50 feet from the stormwater ponds. And again, we talked about the well setback of 70 feet. So we have reviewed all of the main state wastewater disposal standards and have met all those standards with this layout. I don't know, Autumn, would you happen to have the grading plan handy? It'd be the one right after this one. One more. Yes, right there. Great. Thank you. I'll talk about the stormwater a little bit. As you can see, there is a kind of on the right-hand side of Lot 1B, there is a proposed driveway, which does create about 2,200 square feet of new impervious area on that lot. The existing or the proposed house and the driveway extension on Lot A would add about 1,700 square feet of new impervious. And you can see the wastewater disposal system plunked right in the front yard of the proposed house. The most feasible way to capture and treat stormwater from the new impervious areas we found was to create a rain garden in front of the existing house. That's area is already cleared as lawn, and the proposed driveway and the whole front of the house would be the existing house, and the proposed driveway would be all graded to that rain garden. And what that rain garden is it's a shallow pond. It is has about 2 to 3 inches of mulch, and then a soil media filter layer consisting of sand and some loamy material and organics, fiber mulch usually. And then it has a number of various plantings that are detailed on the drawings. And the intent of that system is to capture stormwater runoff from some of the impervious and landscaped areas, and basically treat that runoff from a first flush type storm. A majority of the pollutants from stormwater runoff do come from the first inch of runoff. So it's designed with the capacity to capture that runoff. It would either discharge through infiltration into the ground, some evaporation, and the proposed plantings within that are designed to withstand the wet conditions, and the roots would take up quite a bit of that water as well. So it's a very common stormwater LID measure that we do for residential developments such as this. We felt that capturing existing impervious area in that area, as opposed to clearing more trees and creating more disturbance on the Lot 1A area, just made sense from a whole stormwater perspective and low impact development perspective. We also were able to provide enough detention in that system so that the post-development runoff rates from the 2, 10, and 25-year storms from both lots are less in the post-development condition than in the pre-development condition. All the runoff from that site drains basically from north to south, which would be the upper right corner to the lower left corner. It ends up in the ditch along Highland Ave and continues down to the south. So by capturing some of this area in kind of the upstream area, it mitigated the peak discharge. So it does meet the standards in 406 with the stormwater standards that require the LID measures to be implemented, as well as controlling peak runoff. I will say that the project is not subject to the DEP standards. So again, this rain garden is designed as kind of a small project area. It doesn't meet the full DEP standards for bioretention filters, which are typically designed for larger developments and larger drainage areas. So I'll get into that just briefly when I discuss some of the town comments. But I did want to also point out that the erosion control plans that were included with this do follow the town standards, chapter 420, as well as, and they are geared towards the DEP erosion control standards or basic standards as well. They do consist of silt fencing. You can see that there's a wetland area just on the, I guess, the southwest boundary line. We were able to avoid that wetland area as well. So Erosion control also includes riprap aprons at the proposed culvert inlet and outlet, and also a stabilized construction entrance on the proposed driveway. Just touching upon some of the other subdivision ordinance requirements. The project is not in a flood zone, not in a shoreland zone. It is in excess of 250 feet from the Nonsuch River, which is across the railroad. Just being a single family residence, there is no traffic congestion anticipated. It is a kind of a very similar to the surrounding areas. No scenic impacts are anticipated with this project, as it's currently a residential area. As I stated before, we've avoided the wetlands, and just being a single family home, we don't anticipate any burden to the solid waste system or the solid waste capacity. It does conform with the other ordinances and doesn't cross any municipal boundaries. And just to wrap things up, I just did want to go through some of the town comments and the peer review comments. We did receive some good, thoughtful comments on the project. And I just want to provide you with our thoughts on how we can address those comments. The first comment from the town staff was with regards to the street trees. We're certainly open to providing 2 street trees per lot. I can say that in lot 1A, the space is fairly limited. As you can see, the existing trees go right up to the existing driveway. There's actually a nice pine tree right next to the driveway and several birches in that area and a lot of mixed growth. So we would prefer not to disturb anything in that area. That also captures the stormwater runoff from most of the site. So it would be good to keep that as naturally vegetated. So perhaps we could sneak in a couple of street trees on the other side of the driveway, but they'd have to more or less be staggered or one behind the other to get them in there without disturbing more area on the other side. Certainly on lot 1B, there is plenty of space there, and we will plan to put in 2 street trees per town requirements. Utilities, there were some comments on the public water, which I explained earlier. The parking spaces, there is a requirement for residences to have 2 EV ready spaces. We would be open to a condition as stated in the memo to add a note to that effect. There were some questions on the stormwater, I think mostly to do with the rain garden. And again, the rain garden is intended to treat the first flush. There's a 6-inch deep ponding area. There's about 550 cubic feet of storage runoff from that 6-inch depth. And typically we size those to treat at least 1 inch of the impervious runoff from the impervious areas that go to the structure, as well as 0.4 inches of the lawn or landscaped areas. And those totals for the total area that drains to the rain garden captures about 0.05 acres of impervious and 0.06 acres of lawn. And that would require 280 cubic feet of storage. So the rain garden actually provides additional storage. So usually that 1 inch of runoff comes from about a 1-year storm. And this rain garden would capture in excess of a 1-year storm, close to a 2-year storm, without any outflow out of the rain garden. So that would capture most of the pollutants from this area. There were some comments on the proposed driveway culvert being over the water line. And we didn't show a detail with any insulation or anything. We certainly can. The proposed culvert under the proposed driveway was designed to fit right in the existing ditch grades. There's a high point in the ditch just off the right hand of the sheet, and stormwater flows from right to left as you're looking at the sheet right down the ditch. So there's a 15-inch culvert in the existing driveway to the north, and there's an existing 15-inch culvert in the driveway to the south, or the proposed driveway for the new house. So we surveyed that ditch, we laid in the grades, it's very flat, so we set the culvert so it would conform with the slope of that ditch and stormwater would continue to flow. So the water line, it would typically be 5 feet deep in that location. So where the culvert, the proposed culvert is no deeper than the existing ditch, we wouldn't anticipate any freezing problems or any issues with that. We also provided spot grades, as you can see, right over the culvert on the ditch, which demonstrate that the culvert will have 2 feet of cover. And riprap aprons are proposed on the inlet and outlet. So we wouldn't anticipate any problems with the crossing of the water main, but as an added measure of protection, we can certainly add a detail providing insulation between the bottom of the culvert and the water main or the water service crossing. And again, there was another comment that's requested more detail on the grading. Again, we have 1 foot contours and we have spot grades. We can provide a profile on the plans, but certainly we feel that the information is on the plans to determine the depths of those utilities. There was also a question about the condition of the existing culvert, again, with concerns about, drainage upstream and downstream. The condition of the existing culvert is very good. There are no riprap aprons on the existing culvert under the existing driveway. So I can say that the vegetation right at the culvert inlet and outlet is starting to grow up into the culvert, restricting the capacity. Otherwise, the culvert appears to be pretty clean and it is in very good condition. So what we would suggest is adding, just excavating a little area at each end of that existing culvert and adding some riprap similar to the new culvert, and that should take care of any issues with the existing culvert. The plans, there was a comment that the plan should show the impervious cover in the area treated. Again, though, the numbers are in the stormwater report, but we can certainly add those impervious areas to the plan. And then there was also suggestion that could be a condition adding the standard notes to the plan. And just touching on the peer review comments quickly, there was a suggestion or a recommendation to confirm all the setbacks for the wastewater disposal system. We did check the wastewater disposal rules as I went through earlier, and we feel that it meets all of those. We've determined that it meets all the required setbacks. The HHE 200 would need to be signed by the applicant. We've actually got a note 8 on the site plan that just states that the HHE 200 also has to be reviewed and signed off by the plumbing inspector prior to construction. There was also a comment to provide double erosion control barriers adjacent to the wetlands, and we are certainly open to adding that adjacent to that small wetland area. Peer review also commented on the public water, which I commented on earlier. There was also a comment stating that the contours on the topo contours on the field on the grading plan are slightly different than the contours on the stormwater plan. The reason for this is the existing contours that you see on the grading plan right there are based on an actual field survey where we went out and we topoed that site. Where we were doing the stormwater analysis, we needed more data that extended off the site a little bit. So we used LiDAR contours from the main GIS site. which include 2-foot contours. So we wanted a greater level of detail for the actual site grading and design, whereas for stormwater runoff calculations, the LiDAR contours provided us with the drainage areas and also extended beyond the site as needed for the stormwater study. That site is very flat, so we also had to do some field investigations and just, basically take some additional shots outside the project area to confirm that we had the drainage area boundaries and so forth correct. There was also a comment about explaining why we had one study point on the south side of the project for the stormwater analysis. As I stated, the stormwater runoff, there are some berms in the back of the site adjacent to the railroad. So basically all the area drains more or less from the upper right to the lower left. There is an area that drains to that little wetland area. And then there's a little bit of a high point between that and the ditch, but the stormwater from that area all circles around right into the ditch. So given the relatively small area, we felt it was appropriate to model it as one drainage area to that southerly corner, if you will, which is basically where all the runoff from that site ends up. We could break it down further, but we don't feel that it will improve the accuracy of the stormwater runoff analysis by having very small drainage areas. And then there were a couple of comments in the peer review that talked about rain garden sizing calculations, drawdown time, providing an underdrain piping system beneath the rain garden. Those are certainly main DEP standards outlined in the DEP BMPs. If we were doing a larger project and it was subject to DEP review, and if it exceeded the thresholds on the town standards that required these, we would certainly provide these. However, for this type of project and given the size and magnitude and the fact that we've successfully done these rain gardens for a lot of single family residences like this in the past, we felt that level of treatment met the requirements of the standards, which just generally say that the LID practices have to be implemented. What is hard and fast in the town standards is the requirement to meet the peak runoff rates for the 210 and 25-year storms. And the rain garden certainly provides enough detention to achieve that and also provide the treatment as we stated before. So with that, we feel that we've provided an application that meets all the town standards and accurately reflects the subdivision amendment and the proposed improvements. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is an item that is available for public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to make a comment, either here in the room or online? If there is, please note that you are limited to 3 minutes. Approach the podium or raise your hand if you're online. State your name and address. Do it online. Public comment period is closed. I'm going to turn this over to the board in no particular order. Who would like to go? Go ahead, Roger.
First, I think that was a very nice really good presentation. Did a good job. The only wrinkle in this whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, because I think you responded to everything, the concerns, and you gave, at least from my point of view, reasonable responses for the trees, the street trees. And when I look at your site, it looks like you have a similar tree line on 1B as well, kind of mirroring the tree line on the other 1A. So I don't know if This would be a waiver to waive the, 2 trees per lot, or is that an absolute requirement?
I wasn't aware the applicant is asking for a waiver. I think he's just saying that he would like to work with staff on where to place the 2 trees per lot.
Oh, okay.
And maybe get credit for 2 if he already has them.
Oh, okay, all right, so that's not really an issue then.
Yeah, we're happy to work with them on that.
Okay, fine,
Yep.
okay, then.
The waiver was with regard to the well.
No, I understand.
Okay.
that.
It's a variance
Yeah,
of
I
the
understand now. So that, other than that, I'm fine with everything.
Okay.
Thank you. Jen,
For what it's worth, I would also support the maintenance of any existing trees or vegetated buffer area as opposed to clearing that and planting new street trees just to fulfill the requirement. I think if it's possible to protect those both, sort of above ground, but also being sensitive to their root structure as you're doing the earthwork, particularly near the new driveway location. Just making sure that we, that they're not being kept during construction only to have their roots so disturbed that they're not successful later on. But I think keeping what's there would be ideal. I'm curious why you went with the approach to have a septic system here as opposed to tying into the sewer force main at the back of the property.
The sewer force main in the back of the property, and that's a good question. I should have mentioned that earlier, but when this 1.69 acres, well, actually that house existed when the whole 6 acres was one parcel. But that the wastewater disposal system for that, actually, Autumn, if you can go to the previous drawing. This shows the whole site as it currently is. So the wastewater disposal system for lot 1B is all the way over to that area. There's also a wastewater disposal system just below that line for the house that's on that other parcel just to the right. So there's 2 wastewater disposal systems out there that are each designed for just one residence. So I guess the short answer is it wasn't designed with the capacity for both residences. Thus, and there, as you can see, right where the arrow is there's another wetland area and so forth. So there just wasn't room on that area to get in another wastewater disposal system. So the site evaluator checked the site. He found the best soils right in that location. We kind of had to work everything around that. Yeah, that was the ideal location based on soils.
Okay, thanks. Usually you wouldn't see a septic system if there is any other sewer around. So I was just curious about that.
Good question.
Okay, next, I think definitely appreciate the approach to the low impact development with regard to stormwater here. I also made a note about the lack of any sort of under drain here, but before even getting to that, and actually so the under drain technically helps, in cases where the infiltration or the vegetation of the rain garden can't handle the runoff, whatever the situation may be. And sometimes that's different from what's calculated. But it looks like the overflow, I was curious about the overflow from the rain garden and why it's placed sort of at the top left corner of that area as opposed to the lower left corner, which would overflow into the ditch, the gutter system there, as opposed to onto or over the new or the existing driveway next door.
Okay.
Do I have that right? Am I
Yeah.
interpreting the grading right?
Yeah, no, you certainly are. The reason for that location, we try to put the overflow, these things are relatively shallow. So we do try to put the overflow basically at grade. So when the water, overflows out through the outflow or out through the riprap area, it basically flows out as sheet flow. As you can see, I mean, if you can see the plan, there's a 24 contour that goes kind of parallel with Highland Avenue. So we were anticipating the water to kind of come out at that area at grade and more or less go towards the road as sheet flow down towards there instead of kind of going over, you know, an embankment and then getting more velocity, you know, going down the bank. And it would potentially have less chance of eroding anything if it's at grade. So we kind of put it on the uphill side, just to promote a little more sheet flow and slow down the water as much as we could.
Okay, but it still looks to me like that's gonna flow or has the potential to flow over that other driveway.
Well, it could, but you can see right in the area where the, overhead lines cross the existing driveway.
Mhm.
There is a 24 contour that kind of loops around that way. So that's kind of the high point of the driveway. So before in the 23 is just down below it. So there's a little, you know, bend in the contour so that it would actually kind of pull the water a little bit away from the driveway and come right straight down towards the culvert. We could, by maintaining the same approach, we could move the spillway down to the kind of the lower left corner, but maybe facing the driveway, just to prevent any chance that it does overflow the driveway. Yeah, that area is flat, so we could adjust that slightly to get that to go.
Yeah, so I just, my concern here, however you choose to address it, is just sort of, you know, presumably someday these are owned by people that don't know each other or whatever their relationship is. I think we're just, you know, typically sensitive to burdening one property by what's going on another.
Yep.
And so I think to the extent that you could make adjustments to this treatment system, just to limit the impacts of that water on the property next door, be that the situation that you just described, or the introduction of underdrain, or some combination thereof, or something like that. I just think that would be better. I know that this board has received letters from other neighbors informing us of concerns that they have in sort of their backyard because somebody else did something, paved additional area, whatever that is. And so just for the, I'm looking out for the board here of the future and also this potential resident down the line.
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll take a hard look at that, make sure we don't impact the lot 1A with the rain garden.
Okay, great. I think the only other comment that I had, I don't know, it's a really small wetland area, but I don't know, we kind of feel like we're always charged to look out for all the wetland areas, no matter how big or small. And in some other cases, we ask for developments to somehow like demarcate this wetland area in a way that's not like offensive or obtrusive, but that would indicate to a homeowner, don't cut the trees here, don't mow this area, don't disturb otherwise. Which actually brings me to my actual last point, which is back on the rain garden. I read through the material that you submitted for the maintenance of that. And so this, again, the conversation that we had about making sure that that doesn't impact the adjacent property, I think it's important to make sure that there's protections in place to that rain garden stay functional for as long as this property functions this way. And in other cases, when we have sort of a larger subdivision where maybe there's an HOA or some other larger body that's going to be in charge of taking care of common areas. And I read through the material that you sent, and it sounds like there's appropriate information there about sort of pre-construction, during construction, and even post-construction, but that sounds like immediately post-construction. And so I'm curious what will be in place for this particular homeowner, but also for this property moving forward to make sure that, again, someone doesn't decide they're tired of the bulk bark mulch there and they fill it in and want to mow it as lawn area.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly add some, you know, long-term maintenance, programs. I don't know how, this project wasn't at the size where it triggered the post-construction standards,
Sure.
but it sounds like it, for something like this, it makes sense to implement something similar to that.
I just think, you know, thinking of sort of the worst case scenario, what would happen if this area did get filled in and wasn't kept up that way?
Yeah.
Do both of these driveways now have flooding issues? That's kind of where I was coming from.
Okay.
With regard to that. And I see that, you know, there's a difference here between sort of what the DEP requires and what may be required of us, what we may require of you on a larger subdivision or larger project. But here I'm just thinking really functionally.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I mean, we can certainly outline that. I don't know if it's something that, you know, requires an annual report maybe to say we've inspected this thing and we have to submit it to the town and something of that nature. Does that cover us?
I'll defer to what staff typically do in this case.
We can work with Angela on that as
Okay.
well with the applicant.
Okay, thanks. That's
Yep.
all I have.
Thank you. Ben,
It was a good presentation. I think you addressed a lot of the issues that were being discussed. I do have a question. Looking at this house where the existing driveway is, on the lot 1B, which is the one that's, if I'm saying that right, that's the one that's gonna have, that has the existing house on it, it's 1B.
Yes.
Why are we keeping a bunch of pavement on the side of that house? There's no garage there, right?
There isn't a garage there, but there is a door that comes out onto that area. And they just wanted to keep it as a little patio area.
I was a little concerned looking at just at the, I mean, and I know that Google Maps can be a little unreliable, but it appears like the property sort of slants towards the driveway, you know. And I know you're talking about that as well as on the contours, but just like if there's pavement right there and there's not a driveway that it's connected to anymore, I feel like it's just going to be running a lot of water towards lot 1A. Do you agree? Has that been discussed, or do you think that's not going to be significant? I'm just kind of.
Yeah, I mean, we don't expect it to be a big problem. I mean, the whole driveway is very flat, but it does slope slightly away from the existing house. And then we've graded the little driveway extension, so it comes back to like a V and heads towards Highland Avenue. And, you know, we thought about, well, do we need to, you know, put a rain garden or something in that area? But we felt that just leaving the trees there and letting the water go around the septic system and into that was probably the best situation. Yeah, I do understand your point, and you know, we've done, I guess, what we could to kind of make that area work, but
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I missed it in your presentation. Did you speak to the EV conduits in the driveways?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, my understanding of the requirement is that the driveways would have to be EV ready, which would have, you know, the panel inside the house that would be sufficient to serve those. We typically don't recommend putting empty conduits in the ground that aren't in use until such time that they are ready to be placed in use. So we would typically avoid trying to put conduits in until they were actually needed, but we would set everything up coming out of the house so it would be able to accommodate that. So, I mean, we can put the conduits in during the construction if need be, but we would normally just stub those off at the house and they could be extended if need be when they're ready. So
I guess I'm wondering if we don't do conduits, we need to grant a waiver for that.
So the ordinance calls for the ready spaces, as Bill mentioned, or a waiver, or no, excuse me, or a in lieu fee that's paid.
Oh, okay.
There's no explicit waiver process outlined in the
Right.
parking standards.
Okay.
But let me ask you a question, Eric, to follow up on this. But if they have a conduit that essentially is outside the house but stubbed off, does that meet the ordinance?
That's a good question. I'm not-
In other words, does the conduit have to go all the way down the driveway or find a place
I
at the
think it's-
driveway or?
I think it's just intended for, I mean, if there's like a garage on site, even if it's close to the house, it might not necessarily have to go all the way down the driveway. So as long as there's two spaces that are provided with that conduit, it would meet that standard.
Which would, and the conduit would then be extended if it gets to the point where they want to install the rest of the equipment.
The conduit would have to come from the electrical panel, wherever that is, to a point where the parking would be for the two spaces. And then at that time, they would come back and put the equipment. The conduit should already be there, so then they're just running the. wire.
So in other words, they have to determine now
Yeah,
where
where they're
they
gonna
would
park.
park a car
Correct.
and for the conduit. Does that
We can
clarify
certainly-
things for you?
Yeah, the conduits are easy. The big thing is to make sure that the house is equipped with the panel and has the capacity to support those. So,
And has the conduits out to the parking
and we'll
area?
carry the conduits out to the parking.
A lot cheaper to do it then.
That satisfies my questions. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Right, thank you. Jim,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll mimic the comments from my colleagues with regard to the stormwater questions, comments that they've made already. I guess the only thing that I'll add is with regard to the trees. I'd like to see, if you are gonna plant the town minimum of 2 trees, I'd like to see you exceed the minimum of trees in the space, especially if there's a water issue in this area, wet soils, consider using a Freeman maple or red maple, something that does well in wet soil, something that'll last, average lifespan well taken care of about 80 years or so. Plus it's nice for the area. It's a foliage tree. So what I would like to see is, especially since you're taking away a significant amount of shaded trees and brush and foliage in this area, is to see more than just the town minimum for trees being replaced. I mean, everybody loves a tree, so.
Sure.
I'm usually not the tree guy, but in this case I am. So I would like to see a little bit more of that shown on the drawings. And that's the only comment that I have, Madam Chair.
thank you.
I'm good.
Rick is good. Again, I want to echo the comments of my colleagues. You've given us a really full and excellent application and responded to our questions. We appreciate that. And we appreciate your willingness to work with us in the town to resolve any remaining issues that might be there. Saying that, I have a motion. First amended Highland Avenue subdivision. I move to approve the project titled amended subdivision plan proposed by Johanna Garcia as depicted on the plan set prepared by Northeast Civil Solutions dated 10/25/23 with the following findings and conditions. Findings, the proposal constitutes the first amended Highway Avenue subdivision. The amendment splits the existing lot at 50 Highland Avenue into 2 lots. The board finds that the proposal meets the standards of the town of Scarborough zoning and subdivision ordinances. Conditions: 1, prior to release of the signed subdivision plan for recording, the applicant shall A, address comments in the staff memo dated 11/20/23. B, address comments in the Haley Ward memo dated 11/15/23. C, provide a performance guarantee required by Section 9 of the Town of Scarborough subdivision ordinance, which with costs based on the final plan set. D, update plan sets as discussed at the 11/20 planning board meeting period. E, address comments of the planning board and work with the planning department to resolve any remaining issues. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jen is seconded. Doreen?
Rick King,
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
Yes.
Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes,
And James Hewitt.
Yes.
thank you. The proposal passes.
Okay, thank you.
As a reminder to folks here, we do generally try to have a 5-minute break sometime in the vicinity of 8:30. Section item 4.03. Atlantic Commercial Holdings LLC is requesting review of the 11th amended Innovation District subdivision at Scarborough Downs. The amendment will combine the existing lots 4 and 5 along Innovation Way into a larger singular lot. The property is further identified as Assessors Map U53, lots 4 and 5. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Atlantic Commercial Holdings is proposing to combine two lots, lots 4 and 5 of the Innovation District subdivision. As was mentioned, this would constitute the 11th amendment to the subdivision. Staff's only comment is to have the planning department provided a full plan set. This was done previously with the 10th and 9th amended subdivision plans. And staff has provided a draft motion to that effect for the board's consideration. And with that, I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant.
Thank you very much. I'm Dan Bacon of M&R. I'm here on behalf of Atlantic Commercial Holdings LLC, who's the property owner of both lots. So as introduced by Eric, this is a fairly simple lot combination. It applies to the site plan that the board's going to review as your next item. And it really enables this lot to be developed in a coordinated fashion, particularly around shared access and some shared utilities, including a transformer that you'll review in more detail with your next item. So with that, we're happy to comply with the suggested condition around an updated subdivision plan as noted. Thanks.
Thank you. This item is available for public comment. Is there any member of the public in the audience or online that would care to comment? If you're online, please raise your hand. Nobody stampeding from the floor. Public hearing is over. Let me turn this over to the board. Any questions? None? I have none. In that case, I have a draft motion. I move to approve the project titled the Downs Innovation District's 11th Amendment subdivision proposed by Atlantic Commercial Holdings LLC as depicted on the plan set prepared by Goral Palmer dated 10/27/23 with the following findings and conditions. Findings: the proposal constitutes the 11th Amendment Innovation District subdivision in Scarborough Downs. The amendment includes combining lots 4 and 5 into a singular 2.89 acre lot. The board finds that the proposal meets the standards of the Town of Scarborough zoning subdivision ordinances. Conditions: 1, prior to release of the signed subdivision plan for recording, the applicant shall A, provide a full plan set to the planning department. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Rick Meinking. Doreen?
Rachel Hendrickson,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
Yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
and James.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next item, 4.04, Atlantic Commercial Holdings LLC requests a site plan review to construct a 22,000 square foot light industrial and retail building along Innovation Way. The property is further identified as 106 and 126 Innovation Way, Assessors Map U53, lots 4 and 5. Eric?
Thank you. So Atlantic Commercial Holdings is in front of the board with a site plan proposal to construct a 22,000 or so square foot structure in the Innovation District along Innovation Way. The building would have 2 retail spaces located at the front of the building and 10 incubator spaces at the rear. After review, staff's main concerns relate to site access and the possible development of the remainder of the lot, which Dan briefly spoke to on the subdivision application for the previous item. Updated lighting standards, as well as some low impact development measures. This property was, as I mentioned, this project was subject to the Innovation District subdivision amendment previously heard by the board. With that, I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant.
Good evening, Dan Bacon, again, on behalf of Atlantic Commercial Holdings LLC. I'm joined this evening by Drew Gagnon of Goral Palmer, and also virtually Jessica West, who's the lead developer for Atlantic Commercial Holdings LLC. They're a group actually out of Greater Portland, but also they do some development out west. And this is their first site in Scarborough, so they're excited to be working with Scarborough and performing a site in the Innovation District. Also online, if there are landscape questions, Keith Smith is available should the board have any. Drew, I guess, has had some technical difficulties, so I don't know if Autumn, you have that presentation. Great. So I'm just going to do a brief introduction and then turn over the presentation on engineering to Drew. But to provide a brief introduction, this site and layout is very similar to the incubator units that at least some board members reviewed a few years ago, located at the end of Dynamic Drive, which is just a couple parcels away within the Innovation District. So this is really the same type of program, a very successful layout and a successful space opportunities for small businesses. Incubes has a range of maker space, food processing, in some cases workshops by individual owners. So this is really kind of mimicking that layout. In 10 out of the 12 units are purely designed in that fashion, about 15 to 2,000 square feet. The front two units are the two units that face Innovation Way, are designed in a similar fashion, but also provided the opportunity for some retail space in that they have some visibility to Innovation Way. So each of the units would have overhead door access and also kind of common entry access. But the units that face Innovation Way also have storefront, as you can see in this perspective that Autumn brought up, with a canopy and more of kind of retail aesthetic, with the rear units being more of that incubator, light industrial aesthetic. And this layout, like I said, is very similar to the Incubes in having a driveway that goes around the entire site. And as I mentioned with the subdivision amendment, the driveway into the site has been designed to be on the right side of the site to provide not only access to this particular first phase of development on what now would be Lot 4, but also provide easy access and connectivity to in the future development that at this point isn't planned in detail. The other sharing opportunity is on the electrical side. You can see in the upper right corner of the site plan is a transformer pad that's located there intentionally to serve this building and to tie into the underground three-phase system that is located to the right along the common property line with Throttle. But it's also located so it can easily serve any future development on the right side of the parcel. I think so. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Drew to talk a little bit more about the engineering and response to staff comments. Thanks.
Evening, everyone. Drew Gagnon with Goral Palmer. Apologize for the technical difficulties. Autumn, if you could run the slideshow for me, or I guess if you go one sheet back for me. Thank you. I'm going to start here. So Dan did a nice introduction of what we're proposing here with the 22,000 square foot building. Just a few details surrounding that. You can see the ring road that we're providing around the building for fire access, as well as just general traffic movement. And we're accessing just off Innovation Way in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. The shaded parking spaces that you can see on both the left and right side of the building are designated as employee parking. And what we've done here is you can see there's some gray boxes within the units in the building that are depicting an overhead garage door. So what we're intended to do in saving some impervious area and some impervious surfaces is we position these employee parking spaces in front of those doors so that if they need to get into them, they're easily movable. They're not used up by someone visiting the site for any of those units. The two retail spaces we're envisioning or units are envisioning on the bottom of the building and those two larger areas that you can see divided with the interior wall. And then the parking in front of that is designated that we think will be designated towards retail parking. So that's kind of the orientation and what we've done there. And Dan mentioned the future parcel on the right-hand side of the plan. That's that empty white space with the access drive positioned accordingly so that we can connect to that for what that development programming will be. We don't quite know yet, but we understand the access will be utilizing the entrance that we're creating. Autumn, if you go to the next page, please. Thank you. So for the utility plan, it's pretty simple for this development. We're utilizing the stubs that were provided from the subdivision in 2019. That's just fire and domestic water services, as well as gravity sewer proposed down into Innovation Way. Dan mentioned the electric. We're grabbing from an underground main in what we're calling, I guess, the pond access road on the right-hand side of lot 5. And then there's natural gas connections as well from a sleeve that we left in 2019 from the original subdivision permitting. Autumn, and the next slide, please. Thank you. This is I want to briefly touch on the stormwater on the site. So the site is really tributary to two separate individual collection systems, really ultimately one, but just kind of two different routes to get there. The top right-hand side of the site, which is at the bottom right of this screen that you're looking at right here, is one connection opportunity. And then we are connecting back into a drainage stub we left again in 2019 during the subdivision approvals. The remaining flow from that is connecting into that. That is all tributary to the large wet pond that you can see is directly behind the site and blue. So as everyone knows, this wet pond we constructed in 2019. We expanded it with the Costco project. Just this past year, it is complete. This pond has plenty of capacity for it, and this site has been tributary to it this whole time. So we're simply just following the stormwater management plan that was developed almost 5 years ago now for the Innovation District. You'll notice in the staff comments an SLDA amendment we've applied for this lot. So all that's relative to is there's additional disturbed area we're requesting for this lot. Originally, we had the tree line kind of tucked in. So what we're proposing is just expanding the lot area to fit this programming, and that's just that additional area needed to get permitted through the DEP, which I understand the town got a letter today, basically that the permit is being signed at the state level right now. So really no actual stormwater construction because of the wet pond that's been provided. A few of the town comments I wanted to touch on here. We had a number of lighting comments. So we submitted the application and realized that a week before the new lighting policy had been adopted by town council. So we're happy to address those. We'd love to have that as a condition of approval. We have full intent of addressing all those comments. It was more of a timing when we submitted this. We did not realize that it got passed by the town council just a couple days before that. Sidewalk connections. There was a comment on connecting to the sidewalk in Innovation Way. So the sidewalk is on the south side of Innovation Way, and our project's on the north side of Innovation Way. There is a crosswalk just up the road around the curve, kind of in between Costco and this project, an existing crosswalk for the trailhead parking. We would not recommend or propose another crosswalk at this location, kind of where we're around the curve. It's not really a great spot for an additional crosswalk. So I guess what we can offer is a connection to what we're calling the pond maintenance road, which is on the right-hand side of lot 5, which is that empty lot next to this development. We'd like to have that sidewalk connection and pedestrian connection part of the lot 5 site plan in the future. We're certainly happy to add some notes regarding that. And the intention would be is that pond access drive would, it's really just a gravel, 10-foot wide gravel access maintenance road, does connect to the trails that are proposed and existing in the Innovation District all the way up, and includes connection to Warren Woods up there, just north of the entire Innovation District. So we feel like that's a reasonable connection from a pedestrian standpoint to the rest of the project, rather than additional crosswalk across Innovation Way. With that, I'm actually going to turn it back to Dan and talk a little bit about architecture and landscaping. Happy to answer any questions after that. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew. And this is a illustrative landscape plan that we included in the package and also for presentation purposes. Actually, since staff comments last week, we've added a seating area that was a staff comment raised. So this plan is accurate with the same landscape package, but adds right where Autumn's pointing a seating area that will work well with kind of that retail storefront setting and front sidewalk. In terms of the overall landscape package, we've provided dogwoods and some additional street trees that complement the street trees that are within Innovation Way already, and have provided perimeter plantings as well as plantings within the landscaped islands on the four corners of the site. There's also a bike rack location shown in the right in the center frontage of the building. So as you approach that two storefront areas from Innovation Way, there's a bike rack location. And we've also screened the transformer and the dumpster enclosure, which is in the bottom right of this image. In terms of the architectural approach, I think as the board's aware, the Innovation District uses don't trigger or fall under the commercial design standards, but there's a approved character review criteria and character design standards specific to the Innovation District. So we've worked off of that framework and providing more than the minimum fenestration requirement along the front side of the building, and have intentionally kind of added those canopies and glass and front storefront along the primary facing the street, and also have meet the fenestration requirements on both long sides, though they won't be particularly visible given the location of the building and the orientation of the building. We've also looked at materials to be compatible with what's around this particular site. So this site is just on your left if you're coming down Innovation Way, prior to arriving at the main intersection with Throttle and Crown. And this architecture is different, but has a nice relationship with the Throttle building and also the Dillon Sheet Metal building and Crown that's across the street, and has similar colors to those buildings to fit into the character of the Innovation District. So at a high level, that's our architectural approach. And also, since the staff comments last week, we've updated the elevations to include the lighting, the wall pack lighting locations. That was also a staff comment under the new kind of lighting standards. So we've made those updates, and we can get the staff updated package with those changes made. And so with that, we'll turn back to the board for any public comment and questions you might have.
Thank you. This item is available for public comment. Is there anyone in the room or online who would like to comment? Please either approach the podium or raise your hand online. No hands? Nobody jumping up? Declare public comment period is over. Let's start this one with Rick Meinking.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the narratives and all the information you provided. I think there's a little, some cleanup work that needs to be done. Can you just talk about what the adjacent area is going, what's the plan? I know your plan set says landscaping will be addressed after the second phase. Could you kind of walk the board or walk me through what's the plan?
Yeah, so the Atlantic commercial. This group has actually been trying to lease this site for quite some time to specific end users, and there hasn't been specific end users that move forward. So they've decided to move forward with this half of the site to be this incubator style building. And they're going to continue to seek a specific end user for the site to the right. So the intention really to combine the lots and with this configuration really is that kind of shared drive, which is obviously a planning board goal and policy to have interconnected streets. And then they're going to continue to market that particular site. The reason there isn't a landscaped edge there is because they don't know yet whether that's going to be, there could be another building like this where there could be just parking immediately on the right side of that center drive, or there could be more separation. So rather than placing some landscape that will come out in the next 6 months or 12 months, they kept it open so that there's flexibility in terms of where the connection is made to the common drive.
Okay, so I appreciate the common drive, certainly coming off of Innovation Drive, but just we'll be looking at what goes on there. I don't think it's going to be parking because you need some structure to support that parking. You got to have something going on there in order to support additional parking.
Oh, no, I didn't mean to say there's only be parking there. My suggestion was there's that common drive, and rather than having landscape right along it, that could be parking spaces that would serve a building.
Okay.
Further to the right.
I understand.
To describe.
Yeah.
And I can probably add some color to that as well, in the sense that when we kind of set up this idea, we really were kind of looking for a build to suit user, and we were looking at either each lot individually or one large user with the lots combined. And we have spoken with quite a few different users, none of which we thought would be potentially great in making the Downs better than it is. And so ultimately decided, we wanted to kind of wait until we found something that would add value to the Downs as a whole, the entire innovation district. We thought this concept of building the incubes really complemented the area, especially with the interest we've been getting from users. We've had some people within the Downs Innovation District who already have space there reach out, and really this kind of product is very much needed. There's not a lot of product on the market now for it. Our thought for the phase 2 is, should the demand continue for a product like this, we would ultimately just duplicate it on the second lot and condo buildings, given that the lots will be combined. And if we do find a different end user, we would do maybe one large, build to suit building, considering what we could build on the lot itself. But the reason we haven't sort of nailed that down yet is, it just really depends kind of on what we think the use would be best for, and what would complement the Downs in that area the best. And we really like what those guys have done with building with the incube buildings behind Throttle. We thought it was a really nice look, a really great product, very high end. And that I think ultimately is probably where we're heading on that phase 2. And so to Dan's point, if we were to just duplicate this sort of building on the second lot, we would need that space, I guess, to add additional parking.
Understand. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Staff in their staff comments recommends require a sidewalk connection. Can you address that, Dan?
I think Drew touched on the concept that we thought was within the control with this applicant. And if you can picture, Rick, that undeveloped area to the right there, we think a connection to tie into the overall pedestrian system could occur really from the front walkway that's in front of the building, along the retail frontage, could cross the drive and then connect over to that pedestrian connection
Gotcha.
that is between this, I guess it's now lot 4. It used to be lot 5 a few minutes ago, and Throttle, which could tie this site into the pedestrian system
Okay.
within the project.
All right, I follow that. And again, I appreciate your noting that the lighting standards have changed, and we won't belabor that because it's all nicely spelled out. Thou shalt do this and thou shalt not do that. So with that, there's just, there's a lot of cleanup here that I think in order for me to be comfortable that everything's ready to go, I think we just need to tie up the loose ends. And certainly, I think you're on your way to doing that. I think, again, you've got experience with this kind of a concept, and the building that was put up earlier in the innovation development, district development, I think looks great. And I don't see any reason why this wouldn't replicate that. So at this point, Madam Chair, I'm content with making sure that things are buttoned up here, and we have you've added the scorecards and the parking and the travel or the traffic management plan. So I just like to see things tied up before I give it the nod.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Jen?
Understanding the desire for future development on the space to the right here, I think it makes sense that you're not proposing landscaping in between the two, but I wonder if the board might consider some sort of time frame on that. And I say that realizing that I think all the Downs development properties that we've seen have come in much quicker than any sort of time frame that we could come up with. But, just on the odd chance that that doesn't move forward, that a buffer be planted within some reasonable amount of time. I'm curious why there was no sort of interior landscaping proposed either adjacent to the building, which I actually think was brought up in one of the comment letters, and or a landscaped island or two within the parking, the stretches of parking along the building. And I realize obviously you're juggling overhead doors and regular doors and windows and things like that. But the landscaping plan does just sort of leave those look sort of barren compared to the rest, the other areas that are proposed for planting.
I can show the slide of InCube if you want to talk about this a little bit further. This is existing conditions on the 2 sites that have been performed with the same kind of program. And it's been kind of laid out for to really define that kind of pedestrian space along the front of the building, but also provide easy kind of access from the parking spaces to the overhead doors and to the entry doors. So we really want to kind of mimic this pattern and then anchor the 2 ends of the building with more robust landscaping and kind of keep this more kind of utilitarian given the function of this building. I think where Keith emphasized landscaping is really kind of on the Innovation Way side, where it's more of a commercial retail aesthetic. So we tried to compensate landscaping there and go more and have a healthier quantity of landscape there in order to keep the more kind of light industrial utilitarian design where there's those overhead doors and entry doors.
The sort of comparison to the existing similar uses, I think, is helpful. I'm actually curious based on that, because they had also made a note about some sort of curbing or curb stops to sort of help protect that pedestrian space, if you call it that, or worse, from someone from coming into a part of the building that you don't want people driving into. But also, again, recognizing that there's a series of overhead doors that actually you may very well want that sort of facilitation. So I'm just curious how the other property is functioning. Are people sort of adhering to that, or is there, my guess is probably worse in the winter. People, you can't see the lines as well or something like that.
It's been quite successful so far in the past 3 years. There haven't been any issues. And I think where there's more kind of common retail parking on this other site, we're being more conventional kind of in terms of curbing expectations. Yeah.
Sure, that makes sense. And it's probably the similar users that are, so once you
Yeah,
get
the
familiar
users
with it.
are the owner occupants and their employees in
Okay.
these spaces. So they come every day to the site. So it's predictable. They understand how the parking and overhead doors work.
Okay. Landscaping. I didn't see a whole lot in the way of what jumps out at me as low impact development options in terms of stormwater treatment. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I mean, this site is fully accommodated under the subdivision. So we're not seeking stormwater management, just given the wet pond is sized to accommodate the entire site, like all the other innovation lots. In terms of the staff comments, since we aren't looking to do treatment on site, there isn't, various LID treatment measures for stormwater, at least in terms of the roof color, which obviously isn't a stormwater thing, but it's more of a I guess urban heat island type thing. We, like most roofs in Innovation District, it is going to be a light color. To answer that question, we didn't have a chance to answer that question yet. But the vast majority of the roofs in Innovation District, given the light industrial buildings, are light in color and are reflective. So we certainly are achieving that with the expected approach to the building.
Okay. With regard to the sidewalk, I was having a little bit of a hard time following. It is helpful, actually, this view is sort of helpful to that end, but just for future submissions on this project and any others, I always find it helpful to have obviously the dialed in view when we're looking at like grading and stormwater and such, but for matters that are related to interconnectivity with adjacent lots or other parts of a subdivision, it's always helpful for me to see sort of what that looks like. And so I wonder if when you come back again, if you could show sort of what that sidewalk connection might look like at the time that the lot 5 is built out, in which direction, where are the nearest crosswalks, or what is it that you will be tying into? Even if it's just like a little inset, I think would be helpful. And Drew, I think you said you were explaining that the vision for that might be a walkway continuing from the front of the building and across the driveway onto lot 5. Do I have that right, or was I making it up in my
Yeah,
head?
something like that, correct, yeah.
Okay. See, I had a hard time following. I guess I would just ask if there is a way. So that's going to be outside the right of way. And if you're tying in to pedestrian infrastructure further down in the right of way, and again, for more context, if it would be helpful to see what exists sort of to the left of this site and to the right of this site. And then if there is nothing, which, maybe that's today, maybe that's not forever, but I just think tying into a portion, having this network fall within the right of way is important, and tying into it in that way is also important. And I think that's sort of what the ordinance is kind of getting at. Like, you have your own on-site walkways, which is great, but I think making sure that those are connected to what's in the public right of way is also important, so that the frontage of the site's traversable also, not just onto the site, if you can differentiate that. And then lastly, just a question about why the mix of 9 and 10 foot wide spaces. And you have them hatched in gray on the site plan, but I'm curious if that's going to be, are they going to be painted or otherwise hatched or something in the field, or is that just for our benefit in the plan review?
Yeah, certainly. And to the pedestrian access point, we can provide a figure that I think will answer a lot
Okay,
of your
great.
questions. So we're happy to do that. Regarding the employee hatch spaces, they're more just graphical for the
Okay.
board's consideration. And the reason for some being 10 feet is really just trying to line up the employee parking stalls for turning radii into the overhead door location. So, we're just trying to space it and lay it out there so that, such as one of the unhatched spaces as a visitor parking, if you will, or that, wouldn't be impeded by turning movement. So we just ran a design vehicle, and that's kind of some odd spaces, if you will, had to be a little bit larger just to kind of accommodate that.
Sure. So that, because some of them don't always line up. In fact, it looks like there's a number of them that where it's like the middle of two spaces actually lines up with the overhead door. So you would need both of those to be clear for those turning movements,
Yeah,
as opposed to just like a single space and have someone to kind of drive in it and drive through into the building.
correct. And it's really just the turning, like a larger vehicle turning into that overhead door. We just wanted to be a little conservative with that.
Okay, larger, like a what?
Like a small, I would say like
Just a box truck?
nothing bigger than like a U-Haul truck, something
Okay.
like that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I
Roger?
appreciate those questions very much because I think I call these guys 15 times a day and ask the same ones. And I thought they were going to stop answering my phone calls at one point. So thank you.
Well, thank you for answering them then.
All right, Roger.
Thank you. I really don't have much more to add on this. I do have a question though, on the Throttle Club that's next to the vacant lot.
Yeah.
Do they have a sidewalk in front of that?
There's no sidewalk on this entire side of
On that
Innovation Way.
entire side,
So
right?
the subdivision's laid out to have a sidewalk on the
On
other
the
side of
other
the
side.
street. And then the sites on this side of the street, don't provide for sidewalks.
Okay. So that's the one way, I guess, I don't know. No, I like the architecture of the building, the front of it. I think it looks really nice and it would, if there's similar building in a vacant lot ultimately ends up like this, it'd be nice adjacent to the Throttle Club because that's a attractive looking building. I just have a marketing question, Dan, if I may. We've seen a number of these projects where they're like incubators for small businesses. Are those other ones that are already established, are they doing well? I mean,
Yeah, they're full. That's what
They're
Jessica's
full?
caught on to.
And how about the one to the left of this? Isn't
Yes.
that the same thing?
It's my understanding that they're, if not fully occupied, very close.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been quite successful.
So
And the-
there is, oh,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead, Dan.
Jessica. No,
So there were two spaces. One was, oh, I forget. I just looked this up. But there were two vacant spaces. One has since rented and the other one I haven't looked to see if it's off the market, but I know both of them were going for about $16 a square foot triple. And we spoke to several well-known brokers in the area when we were kind of mulling over developing this project, and the demand for this type of product is incredible. I mean, there's just nothing out there. The market is definitely not saturated, and I know that as soon as kind of word got out we were doing this, we've gotten quite a bit of interest. I have a laundry list of people who want to pre-lease. So I think it will do very well. Knock on wood.
Good. What you might want to consider is if you have all these small businesses in these incubators, you're gonna need some space for when they grow. Now, you don't want to move them out of the
You're hired.
Okay, I come very cheap. I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
I guess following up on that, what kind of, I guess, give me a few examples of a few of the businesses that could be going in here. Are we looking at maybe like a startup brewery or something a little bit more on the consumer side? What kind of startups are we?
Yeah, so we mulled that over as well. And in terms of any kind of a restaurant or anything like that, we did not want to do that. I think that causes maybe additional plumbing, stormwater issues and that sort of thing. And we just kind of said that that's not something that we want to start digging into. We've done several of these in the past. We've had really good success with small users. We had a window tinting shop in one. We had a printing. You guys, if you go and you look at 84 Ocean Park and 24 Industrial Park in Saco, we developed those. We did a couple in Broadway, and we can provide a list of the ones we've done as well. And they all sold out. We sold those. We didn't lease them. This one we're going to hold and lease. But the people we've had coming to us now, we have somebody who needs car storage, somebody in the area that wants to store materials. We did the two larger retail spaces because there has been some interest in terms of people having a storefront, whether it's a showroom for a flooring company or a window and shade company. We've had a couple of pest control companies, which we said no to. We don't want to deal with any kind of chemicals or anything like that. But just sort of these smaller storage units. We had somebody who wants to store high-end cars, which I haven't gotten any G2 on that yet, but it sounded really fun. And then just people maybe who are looking for a small meeting space or something like that. But those are kind of the typical end users we've been seeing.
Okay. I guess I'm thinking as this goes, as we're moving into the future on this and thinking a generation from now for other businesses that evolve and take these spaces as well as other businesses transition out. I'm thinking about the employees and the drive up customers for this. And given the nature of how connected we want to have this entire area, the sidewalk connectivity is important for me here. Especially if you have something where somebody wanted to park here, walk next door, or park next door and walk here. I think accessibility for it to the sidewalks across the street and making sure that not just drive up customers, but also employees that are working here as well have that opportunity to, if they want to cross the street, go onto the sidewalk and then take a walk during lunch or something like that further into the downs or the downtown area. They're given that opportunity for it. So I'd like to see whether if it's not directly in front of this portion of the lot, or if it's a little bit further closer to the Throttle Car Club where you can meet up with that crosswalk that's already near Score Builders or Crown Lifts or whichever business is on that corner. I would like to see that. Again, walkability, connectivity is really important here, even in this light industrial area. And I'd like to see that. Separately, it was already touched upon for the lighting ordinance. I noticed the Geopack, Viper, Edge, those are all available in 80 CRA, and I want to make sure that those are noted on the cut sheets. I'm sure you guys have already seen that. It's already been discussed. I have no issue with what you're trying to do here. I think this is cool. This promotes startup businesses, especially local businesses, to try to get a spot that can be affordable with a small footprint that they can do their thing. And I think that's really important, especially where we see a lot of big box chains kind of coming in here. Smaller businesses trying to promote a more local vibe here is kind of what the character that I'd like to see more of, especially in the industrial district. Industrial can be kind of bland and kind of standard at the same time, but adding in things like making sure that there is a crosswalk there, that there is connectivity for, maybe they don't need it today, but maybe they need it 5-10 years from now. And instead of, as it was mentioned out earlier, that Rick said about bury conduit now because it's easier and cheaper to do it now, and put a sidewalk in now where you have the road and portions of it ripped up. It's cheaper to do it now than it is to do it later. In another iteration of this, I would like to see more of a plan just kind of showing just, you know, the snapshot of this area and what the walking connectivity is between this new lot and the surrounding lots. I know, I mean, I'm looking at Google Earth and just memories for myself of like, all right, the crosswalks on the other side of the road that connects to these other businesses here. But I'd like to see it on plan as part of the package. And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would echo James's comments, especially regarding the connectivity. I like to take walks during lunch myself, and you know, if I was working somewhere near here, I'd want to be able to walk to a coffee shop in the Downs or whatever. So it is really important. I have a question about the outdoor seating. I know it was mentioned in one of the staff comments, the outdoor seating. Looking at the rendering here, the front rendering, the storefronts, if you put the seating like in front of the windows, you're blocking the showroom, right? So I would recommend that maybe have the seating in the middle and just extend the awning so it's fully across, and then there's shade the whole way across for anyone who wants to sit.
Okay.
Just trying to think.
Yeah, we were thinking to not block storefronts by putting it sort of in a landscaped area. And I realize you don't have the plan that we updated, you know,
Okay.
since staff comments, but the concept here, different, but kind of along the same lines, Ben, in terms of shifting it away from storefront, was to have it in the largest landscaped area there on the corner of
Oh,
the
okay.
building, right there, where there could be, and we were thinking it could be maybe the most shared there, where it's not just a retail outdoor seating area. It could benefit
Employees and-
tenants to the
yep.
rear, thinking that it wouldn't be viewed as just a retail space if it's kind of on that corner. But, you know, we're open to other ideas. That's just what we thought made sense. And then have it the bike racks kind of where I think maybe you were describing, right by the crosswalk there. But we can look at that before we resubmit.
Yeah,
Sure.
if I
Like to
may,
see that.
this is Keith Smith, landscape architecture. Also that space, as Dan mentioned, was a larger space, so we had the opportunity to put planting around the seating area. So you're not feeling like you're in the middle of a parking lot. It gives kind of a little oasis of the site to be able to sit down and enjoy.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to, well, first of all, I want to compliment you on the architecture. I do think it fits in with the incube that you can see that came in around 3 years ago, some of the first buildings in there. I think this is a good addition. It is a good addition to a front lot, which then raises the question of the design standards in the innovation district and the fact that the front lots, the buildings were to have a close relationship with the street without parking. And that is not what's happened here. I mean, I understand the rationale for placing the parking where you have, because that basically is the parking for the retail. But the designs parameters for the innovation district calls for front lots to have that relationship with the street. And if you look down in the rest of the innovation district, there are a couple of exceptions, but primarily everything along Innovation Drive or Innovation Way and Center Street have a relationship with the street, a much closer relationship with the street with no parking in front. So I'm going to ask you to think about how you would redesign this, pulling the building closer to the front. My suspicions are that means that you're going to have to consider how you would put parking into the old Lot 5, which is now still Lot 4. It's all still Lot 4, and change the parameters of. It looks as though you're still looking upon this as Lot 4, without any change, and lot 5 separately, but they're no longer separate. They're one lot. I think I think you probably have some options. But I think especially if you've got retail, you want people driving by to see something. You want them to be able to look at the windows. You want them to be able to see what's in there and entice people to come in, perhaps. It doesn't necessarily mean that the retail that you have there must be destination. It could be something that people see as they are driving by, or as employees are driving by. So in terms of then connectivity to the throttle area and the trails there, that means interior. So to me, it means interior sidewalks. And that's a good possibility, not necessarily the exterior sidewalks, but the interior sidewalks that would really allow people to move back and forth. There is a trailhead that comes out at the Oyster building, which is the Oyster Development, which is next door on one side. And then there's another area that can be walked down on between lot 5 and the Throttle Club. So there's a lot of opportunity for people to find the exercise there. And I think that can be done by internal sidewalks, internal activities or trails. And I urge you to try and do that. I like the idea of the sharing of the utilities of the transformers. And again, I want to reiterate, I really like the design that you've got here. But I think in keeping with what the purpose of the original vision of the Innovation District, that building needs to be pulled forward. And I look forward to seeing an effort to do that on your behalf. Do you have any questions?
We can certainly look at that. I mean, this design was laid out to be similar to obviously AV Technic, Crown, Throttle that have a strong relationship to the street, but also have some percentage of parking out front. And we saw this as a very similar program and similarly allowed for. But we can look at how we strengthen the connection to the street, because I'm hearing your desire, and we'll look at how best to do that to achieve that to the extent possible with this program.
Yeah, and I took a look, and it was basically Throttle has that connection. It doesn't have a street that goes around, I don't believe. There's
No, it's a front parking
but
access.
it's also a display area basically for cars. But it has that front. It's more of a front patio. AV Technic does have some parking in front, and I recall some of the conversations that we had leading to that. As I recall, the storage company, I can't remember all of their names, has a relationship with the street, no parking in front. The Score Builders has a relationship with the street, no parking in front. When you go down Center Street, those are all basically a chunk of them are front lots, and I think it's Dukas Construction is right on the street basically, and I think it's building 51. There is no parking in front of it. So basically, more of the Innovation District has no parking in front than has the parking in front. So take a look at how you can develop that relationship, and I think you can get really creative and come back to us with something that honors that original vision that we had there, and that would provide another, what I'm going to say is another classy building to the Innovation District, because for an industrial area, a commercial area, Innovation is classy. The whole area is, and I know that you can bring forward that connection and honor that vision.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
Madam Chairwoman, may I ask a
Certainly.
question on the parking? Are you referencing the one that is directly in front of the building or the one that is on the closest to the street on the far side of the roundabout there?
The one that's directly in front of the building facing the street.
Okay.
A lot of this depends upon the initial discussions that we had as we were looking at how what the whole concept of innovation districts was, and the concept of front lots, middle lots, and rear lots, and the requirements there. And the front lots, the requirement was a connection, strong connection to the street. And this board has taken that primarily to mean no parking, not always, but primarily. I believe can't remember the name of the lobster company and that's no longer there, but that was also had no parking in front. In other words, the buildings tended to line up down the street. And that meant no parking. So I think I'm not going to say if you put parking in front, I'm going to vote against it, because I think there are some creative ways to look at it. To me, it's the relationship with the street that becomes important.
Got it.
Got it?
Yeah.
Very good. See you again.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much, everyone.
And let us take a 5-minute break. I depend upon that clock there to time 5 minutes. Planning board is back in session. Item number 4.05, Waterstone Scarborough LLC is requesting site plan review for a 5,040 square foot bank located at the intersection of Gallery Boulevard and the Walmart Access Drive. The property is further identified as 700 Gallery Boulevard, assessors map R37, lot 3307. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Waterstone's currently in front of the planning board with a site plan for a lot along Gallery Boulevard and the Walmart Access Drive. The site was previously the subject of a 2020 master plan to reduce the setback from Gallery Boulevard. The applicant's currently proposing to abide by that master plan narrative, which is provided for the board's review. Staff's main concerns on the project revolve around the existing stormwater facilities and possible need for maintenance, as well as traffic, as the applicant is currently pursuing a main DOT traffic movement permit. The board may also wish to discuss the architecture of the bank, as the lot faces access ways from 3 sides of the building. With that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant.
Good evening, Ian McKinnon with Jones Beach Engineers. With me tonight is Brian Kaplan from Onyx Partners. They're the owner of Waterstone Scarborough LLC, so owner and applicant for this project. So as mentioned, this property is located at 700 Gallery Boulevard, map 37, lot 3307. Many of you might be familiar. Back in 2015, you saw the construction of what is now Marshall's Homes Goods, kind of those big box retailers. Back in 2018, the Gallery Boulevard frontage was built out with a multi-tenant structure, which is on this plan just to the right. You can kind of see the hatching, the outline of that. So that was approved in 2018. Construction started that later that year, so occupied as of 2019. This it's mentioned in some of the project narrative. This site, the project site, that is really the last remaining pad site. There was an application filed in 2020 with the board. It was going to be for a slightly smaller but drive-up food use on the property. Due to some leasing issues, that project fizzled out. The application was withdrawn from the board, but at that time we had actually already filed our main DEP amendment permit. So we actually have an amendment approval for the restaurant that we can't build. So the reason I mentioned that is it was a good indicator of, you know, the developability of this pad site in the eyes of the state. So it is important to note that earlier this year in May, we did via main subdivision law, we broke out an approximate 0.6 acre lease area. There is some outlining for that on this plan. It's actually, we follow some curb lines and stuff. So that is primarily for the ability to define an area for lease to the proposed tenant of this bank. And as mentioned, it's shown on the plan, it's a 5,000 square foot bank with 1 drive up ATM on that left side of the building you can see. We are showing 16 parking spaces in total, 10 on that right side, the east side, and 6 on the south side. So those are broken up. It was mentioned in the comments, we are showing currently 1 EV capable, 2 EV ready. I did notice in the latest staff comments that I think we actually need to show an additional EV ready site parking space. We can easily do that on this plan. We have the access to the transformer there. There are some existing sidewalk networks here for the adjacent multi-tenant building and also interior to the 700 Gallery Boulevard site. So we have sidewalks on Gallery Boulevard. We have sidewalks on the Walmart Access Drive on our west side. They then wrap into the property on the south side and then kind of tee off into multiple directions as you get to like this interior site driveway here. So we are showing connection to the sidewalk there on the east side of our proposed project site, which falls on the west side of the multi-tenant. So there's a number of sidewalks throughout this site. And we are showing a direct connection from the front door of this bank over to that sidewalk. It is important to note the front door of this project is placed on the Gallery Boulevard frontage and into the front 50-foot setback as mentioned. As previously submitted on this project, we did submit the plan development narrative to support that. And we do have just the one-way drive lane around to access that ATM. There were some renderings provided in your packet along with some colored elevations. So this view is from what would be the northeast. So Gallery Boulevard would be at your back on the right side or the right side of the plan. Essentially, the view here, if the building wasn't here, you'd be looking at the front of Walmart. So that's this kind of vantage point. And then this would be from with that Walmart access drive behind you. So this is again on the left side there is the multi-tenant. So it's just looking at it from the two sides. We don't have a rendering for the rear south entry into this pad site, but the building elevations included in the packet do show that. We are showing a bike rack located near the front door of the project. And we do have a bench which we're proposing to locate centrally between this proposed bank site and the adjacent multi-tenant. The reason for that is being that it's a bank. There's some security concerns with having seating or loitering per se at the front door, at least from the tenant's perspective. So the location of that is, yep, exactly. So where I'm pointing. So we've placed it pretty much right along the center of the interface of these two buildings. Again, right along those interconnected sidewalks. So that is where we're showing the bench currently to satisfy that requirement. To quickly touch upon stormwater and utilities, similarly to how we designed the project in 2020 and did receive that DEP amendment, we are utilizing a closed drainage system that catch basins that feeds to an underground chamber system with a proprietary stormwater filter meeting the DEP requirements. The approach we took with that, similar to 2020, is that because we know this site discharges to a very large stormwater pond on the south side of this whole lot, we knew years ago it was going to be hard to recreate stormwater calculations from the early 2000s. It would have been a pretty large effort to try and prove if that pond could treat the impervious from this site. So we had the elevation to work with, so we took the approach of collecting and treating all of the impervious from this project here, everything, all the pavement you see hatched here and actually including the building. We detain and treat it before discharging downstream to the existing stormwater system. So we treated this as its own little mini analysis point from pre and post development, and we actually slightly reduce in all storm events from the pre-development. So that goes to the overall stormwater system for this law. As mentioned in the comments, we have a little bit of coordination still left to do with the town to get a clear picture of what maintenance item needs to be done on that back pond. The issue being is actually it's a pond that receives water from both Walmart, the 700 Gallery Boulevard site, this project, and actually the town of Scarborough has an easement for Gallery Boulevard to send water down there too. So we're going to work to clean that up and work through, make sure we have the authority to get on there and do all the proper maintenance. I think we have some of the maintenance items that need to be done. And so we'll coordinate with town staff to make sure that it meets the sustainability coordinator's checklist as well. Water, gas, and sewer services will come from Gallery Boulevard. We've not submitted to Scarborough Sewer District yet, or Portland Water. I have those actually sitting in draft form. Hopefully with some good feedback tonight, we'll get those submitted for ability to serve. Electric, we hope, we have a little bit of coordination to do with CMP right now, and we're trying to get a better picture of their infrastructure. We think we'll be able to tie into the service that was installed for the multi-tenant building. We'll have to install some conduit on our property, but along the frontage. They're trying to get back to us on sizing because we can't just tap into whatever we want to tap into. Lighting, there is a lighting plan that was submitted with this plan set that was completed by the bank tenant's lighting consultant. It is noted in this, I noticed it was noted in the staff comments, although this project was submitted back in May initially, and then there was some stalls because of the traffic questions. We are, as we've heard tonight, we are aware that the new lighting ordinance came out. So as part of this, we'll be back before you. We'll review that ordinance to make sure we're in compliance. I scanned through it, and I think, although maybe not noted on, say, some of the mounting heights, I know that we would likely be within that 20-foot limit. So we will make sure that we do comply with that new ordinance. And then landscape is the last piece. So we did have a full landscape design package prepared by Dry Landscape Architecture. Initially when we submitted this in May, we had submitted 2 waiver requests. One was for a full traffic impact study. We had provided a trip generation memo at the time. As you've heard, there was some discussion that went on with town staff and DOT and some timing around the approval of the 2018 building, that's how we've now been come into the TMP process. So we are working, we've had several meetings with town staff. We're continuing to work through the TMP process with town staff, but we had also submitted a waiver request for a full landscape plan. Our reasoning behind that is that the 2018 approval had actually covered the perimeter plantings of this entire lot. You can actually kind of see, we didn't show everything, every single plant, but there is some remnants shown on this kind of plan on the perimeter there. So there is existing landscaping surrounding this property. Some areas weren't fully installed, at least from what I can tell from the 2018 landscape plan. So what we had originally intended to do was kind of in office, use similar plantings and supplement interior to the project, utilizing that exterior buffer. So we did have a meeting with town staff, and I think there was a desire there to go ahead and just kind of revise that. So we went ahead and worked with Braden at Dry, and we've withdrawn that waiver request, and we submitted a full landscape design package. As mentioned, we do need a main DEP site location and development amendment for this. We have actually filed that already. And so that might take some time to come in, but we are trying to work with DEP and not prod them too much to get an ETA on that, but we have already filed that amendment. And as I mentioned, the TMP is in process. So I did mention that we originally had 2 waiver requests, which actually both of the originally May submission, we've actually withdrawn both of those. But with some discussion with town staff, we met with Angela a couple times and actually kind of worked out some of the reconfiguration of the driveway that you can see here. We are requesting one waiver now for using a 24-foot wide 2-way drive aisle. So that would be on the right side of the building here. The reason for that, 25 feet is required in the ordinance. The reason for that is that the rest of interior to this project, those parking rows are 24 feet. So we're just trying to keep in the character of the rest of 700 Gallery Boulevard, which is really comprised of those 3 pods of buildings now with this building. And lastly, I think I'll just mention that we did have some initial staff and peer review comments from that May submission, and that's kind of what between then and now we've been working with town staff. I think we've addressed the bulk of those, and we did receive some updated comments from Haley Ward and town staff. I did read through those. Unless there's any specific questions on them, I felt that there were things that we could certainly discuss further with staff. Things such as just confirming the fire truck size we're using for truck turning, stuff like that. But I guess I'll open it up to the board. I'm happy to get into the comments in more detail if that's desired, but I figured I'd let it come back to the board first.
All right, thank you. This item is available for public comment. Is there any member of the public in the room or online who would care to comment? No one online? Nobody moving from the back row? Public comment is closed. And I turn this over to the board. No particular order, please. Go ahead.
I guess tell me why a bank is the best use here rather than the smaller scale restaurant, the smaller footprint, which may not necessitate the need for a waiver. I guess why a bank?
I'd have to look back at the 2020 plan. I think we had a 24-foot driveway then. Although it was a smaller footprint, the restaurant roofs did require more parking, so the level of disturbance was the same. So essentially, because of this use, we didn't need as much parking. But previously, it was actually a similar layout that you see here, but it was a a two-sided parking on that two-way drive aisle on the right side. So it was a much smaller building with the drive-through. So
Understood.
the actual limits of the curb line, the outer curb line was almost identical between the
Okay.
two. Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you for your answer. I guess my my question stems from we just approved two banks in the last 8 months, and then there's also a bank in the Walmart across the way, and there's a bank right down the road. Have you seen, I guess, in your work and in your work in developing these properties, is there an increase in demand in having banks, more banks now than in the past? I would personally like to know why are we seeing so many banks coming in here when and
Yeah, Brian Kaplan with Onyx Partners. I can't answer for the banks of why there's been an increase. But I do know that banks seem to be a tenant that are looking for more physical locations. I know a lot of people have gone online for their banking, but they have a big push. I think it's a lot of branding to really speak to it. Branding, being in person, being front and center. But we've seen that across a lot of our developments that banks are just very active in these markets. And I think the demand restaurant space, certainly some operations that you've seen are expanding rapidly. But for more local, small, specifically for this site, it's just tougher for some national banks to restaurants to fit within constraints. They have their prototypes, their typical designs, and they kind of don't stray from those. And so it's just been harder to find a national tenant for this space.
okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Again, I'm just seeing a lot of banks this year, and I'm just why so many banks? I guess what I would like to see before we would vote on this and move and perform any action on it is to see the CMP coordination that completed and have that resolved prior to us making a decision on this. Only because I know that there's a significant backlog on a lot of CMP equipment, like bar CTs and transformers, and that are looking at, 60+ weeks lead time. So I would like to, and I know that that has a significant impact, not just on construction schedule, but for entire phasing of the site. So I would like to see, have that coordination with CMP resolved and have them confirm exactly where on the site that you're going to be feeding from, before I'd be comfortable moving forward with it.
Sure. Yeah, that's a unique one where it's all underground infrastructure here. We pretty much got to work with what it is. And at least from our understanding, based on what's being here, that adding this small piece shouldn't, unless we're at the 100% capacity right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that lead time on, say, a transformer, we're often finding times that is the controlling schedule factor on an entire project.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the question you never want to ask these days is how long until I can get a transformer. But yeah. We'll have that. We'll try and get more clarity on that.
Cool. At least have the plan locked down with CMP, not necessarily what you're waiting for equipment, but yeah, just to see where it's gonna be routed from, have your conduit routes identified, locked in, and just sort of immortalized.
Sure.
I guess I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, but that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ben?
I know we're waiting on the traffic study and everything, but could you speak to the intended traffic flow at the bottom right corner here of the lot? If cars are turning in off of whatever is to the south of here,
Kind of an interior drive, yeah.
and they got to do like a weird turn to get to the right lane, go into there. Is there a reason we have to have that island in the corner? Is it one-way traffic going through here? It's two-way traffic going through that whole macaroni shaped piece, right?
Yeah, so on the left side of the page, there is, I do have an overall too that I can pull up. On the left side of the page, right, is that Walmart shared access drive between the two sites. On the south side of this image, what you're seeing there is that's actually a interior site drive through this whole property that cuts back over to Gallery Boulevard. And then on the north side is the multi-tenant building and this. So this site drive that you see here is one of two site drives that pretty much runs along the front, or this backside, really, if you look at it from the streetscape, of the multi-tenant. So by constructing this configuration, it really is the only location, obviously, that I think, well, it makes the most sense for the connection, because alternatively you're looking at a driveway onto the Walmart access drive, which I think would cause many more traffic conflicts. So I think what we've done here though is we can't line it up perfectly, but we've added stop control coming from the right side along the front of the multi-tenant where there currently isn't. We have stop control leaving the two-way on the right side of the building, and then we have a stop control from the one-way exit. One thing that we did do, kind of working with staff, and Angela was in that meeting as well, is we've actually, it looks like a very wide driveway. Before, that one-way was a little bit wider. So what we've actually worked to do is try and find that bare minimum that you can get, say, I always think of a large truck nowadays is really your controlling turning motion and something like this, making sure that we can get in and out and around the site. But we're trying to create it's a four-way intersection with three sides stop controlled. And then it is fairly open. I know we're showing some landscaping and stuff like that, but at least I've been on the site multiple times, having, say, this sharper corner now, which is what it is now, it's just a sharp curve. It does really keep the speeds down through this area. And then say somebody accessing the larger box tenants south of this view, they actually would come in a lot of times you can come in this Walmart access drive and they'll go further down before taking the left in. So there's kind of a good split there. They can either enter here and then find a parking aisle, or they'll split. So there's a lot of interconnectivity between all the drive lanes on this site between the three structures. So in a way, it's some people call it a maze effect. You kind of have to go slow to make sure you're taking the right turn to find your drive aisle, but it does keep speeds down. And
Yeah, as long as the signage is appropriate, because people can get confused kind of easily I'm confused looking at the plans. I can't imagine,
Yeah.
So,
And so one component of it that the tenant has shown us some, but there's a pretty robust signing package. Banks are big on their enter exit signage. So they've worked on that, reviewed it against the town ordinances to make sure it's in compliance. So there will be exit and entry signage on both sides of the driveway. We'll have appropriate signage to make sure that that one-way drive is seen as a do not enter. That was something that actually we did based on initial staff comment. Is originally we had the sidewalk tight against that south side of the building. So we pulled that away to comply first with the 5-foot requirement for landscaping around the building, but it reduced the width of that drive. And I think by throttling those drives down while still being able to pass them, it's that slowing effect. It's kind of like when you suck a street down to try and slow people down as well. So we find that these sites, maybe I would love to have everything lined up perfectly in a 90-degree, but I think customers who might come here repeatedly will kind of learn those traffic motions. And so that's a piece of it too. They'll kind of have to learn, they'll take it slow and they'll slowly learn the traffic patterns to use the site.
okay. Other than that, there's a number of staff comments and peer review comments that you'll want to address further, but I think that's really all that I have for now.
We reviewed those and nothing was a red flag that we felt like we needed to discuss with the board. All seemed things that manageable. A lot of it we were already working on anyways.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Roger?
Thank you. Could you, well, first of all, I think the building looks very attractive.
Thank you.
And I do agree regarding the banks. I don't know why they're still building them this size. Cause you go into them and there's hardly anybody in there, but it's probably a branding thing. On this, I guess it's the south side. There's a question about windows.
Yep.
You have no windows on that side?
So I know Autumn feels very passionately about this item. There is windows currently on the elevation, the most recent elevation. They're two small windows. So the reason for that is that the bank, so kind of based off the interior layout, the secure space on this building happens to be on that south side. So the typical elevation, they don't put any penetrations on that wall because that's where the secure IT rooms, the money rooms, everything that's secure is thrown to that back end. Because this is a prototypical layout with a few minor tweaks, but overall there's a flow. You enter through the back and then people enter on one side and then the far end is where all the secure space is. So the two windows that you can see there, they're kind of those high barn style windows were added in some rooms that I'm sure they'll come up with some sort of security measure to make sure they're truly secure windows. That, or they would be, say like the kind of, I call it marketing glazing, where it's almost a faux window. You can't see through the building, but most people would never look at it and know that it's not a real window. But it would be true glazing glass. So this is what they've presented most recently. I imagine when we discuss with staff that we'll talk about the architecture further. So we're kind of working here with the tenant based on obviously balancing their prototype against the town's requirements. So there were some additional windows added per their prototype, but I imagine that conversation is not over yet with town staff.
And that door is for employees only, is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yep, that would be employees or services. One of the things that I didn't know, it was on some of the original staff comments, is that some people might wonder why there's no dumpster, and that's because this is serviced by essentially they have to have specially certified cleaners that are can handle a secure space. So all the trash is actually removed by them, taken off site, pretty much every cleaning, almost every day. So that was one reason. So that door would only be used for after hours access or employees.
And there'll be some landscaping right
Correct.
there as well.
Yep, yeah, so that 5-foot landscape space that we were able to get back on the south side, there was some, I don't have the species off the top of my head, but it was a mix of shrubs and perennials on that south side that wrap around all sides of the building.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Understanding that this is evolved, I'll say, from a national prototype, I'm just really curious why the main entrance of the building is at the back of the site.
So the reason we did that is they're kind of embracing kind of the streetscape, trying to be as close to the road as possible, and knowing what we were left with here for space to fit parking, your access around. Inherently, because we're adding a drive-through component, we're forcing the need for circulation at least around 3 sides of the building. In this case, we need 4 to be able to get back to the main entry point. So you can kind of see from the renderings, they're kind of embracing Gallery Boulevard as the primary street, and they're trying to create that more as a streetscape appearance. And so that's why you kind of on the south side, you're having less of the windows, right? Because they're used to that being the back of the site. The unique thing here is we essentially have a 4-sided site. You have visibility on all 4 sides. There really is no back to the site. So we're kind of trying to balance all of that.
I guess I just interpret it as like the front of the site being where you enter the site, and with no real pedestrian connection, although I guess maybe against the other mixed use building. My guess is that the majority of the traffic entering the site is going to be coming from this internal roadway. And the orientation, I believe, of the mixed use building adjacent to this is oriented inward. Is that correct?
It is.
As opposed to on Gallery Boulevard?
Correct. The entry, the patron entry spaces are on the south side, so the interior side.
Yeah.
That adjacent structure, though, has been built with a streetscape appearance. So if you'll see, it's got the glazing on the back side. It's not just a CMU wall or something. So they've kind of, that's almost, again, like a mirrored building.
Yeah.
And then actually the Gallery Boulevard side is where you would have your delivery doors. There's a sidewalk back there too. So it actually does give the appearance of a storefront, just not as much so as the other side where actually patrons use.
Sure. So I guess just listening to you explain the treatment that's proposed for I don't have my north arrow in this view, but for the wall of the building closest to the entry point,
south
side, yeah, down there where the secure room is, right? That seems to me very consistent with the orientation and sort of the design of the adjacent building, and kind of just that whole that whole, I don't know, actually both sides, even the marshals, on the other side. So, I would just question why that's not a different orientation. Maybe that's just my own personal take on it, but I think that could potentially also, it opens up some additional parking. It puts your main entrance closer to both parking and the internal walkways elsewhere on this site. So I don't know, that's just something I would suggest considering. And then, that way, if you really wanted faux windows, or, there would be no reason to sort of dress up that southerly wall to this entrance, because if it was facing backwards into what's a pretty robust landscaping plan, it looks like. So it doesn't, I don't know, there's just more space back there. It just doesn't seem like it's the right fit to orient it to a higher speed, limited access roadway, as opposed to a much slower speed entrance way and internal roadway where the majority of your traffic is going to be coming from. On the topic of that, the entrance, I'm curious why you're not proposing to just sort of reconstruct that as a cleaner four-way intersection, internal intersection.
Primarily because we're close to being aligned, and at least in my opinion. So I guess if I were to reconstruct it in a perfect world, we'd hold the center line of that two-way drive that we have, which likely would start having to reconstruct essentially that whole drive. The existing drive would kind of have to slide to the right. So it was really, we'd lose probably a parking space or two for the multi-tenant building. We really would just kind of increasing the scope of work, or the limit of work for this project. I think we kind of saw that really no matter what project we came forward with here, the only way to have that true, I call it like a perfect T alignment here on a site would leave little to no room for like a building and be stuffed up in that corner of the easement and the setbacks. So I guess I know in a perfect world, we'd have that all those center lines perfectly lined up. And that's why we did kind of work with Angela. We actually had a plan out there kind of sketching some different things. And that's where you've seen this kind of configuration with some one ways, some striping. We had talked about having some additional actual curved medians, but then I always think about the concerns about winter maintenance, plowing. So we do have actually you would see it in the original submission in May. This was a little bit more expansive in terms of the amount of pavement here at this intersection. We tried to create a little bit more definition here. It's still, no matter what really user I think we would have in this remaining pad site, it's going to be a little bit of, as patrons come, they will learn the traffic motions. Being that it's a bank, hopefully you're getting repeat customers. So if it was maybe more of a high turnover food use, you're getting a lot more newer faces that wouldn't be familiar with the site. And I do want to touch upon the question about the entrance. We did look at early on, we had actually, I think, asked that question of could the entrance be at that southeast corner? And you can kind of see from this plan that yes, you could flip it. I think our concern was then if you have pedestrian connectivity, there is going to be a lot of turning motions here that we had a little bit of concern with, just the proximity to somebody walking out that front door. And there's just a lot of, essentially that was the intersection, that junction there. So I know actually Autumn had a comment that we can still discuss, but their architecture was some way of dressing up that southeast corner to give that bump out appearance. We're looking to see if that's still an option with the interior footprint, but yeah, their goal here was really they're treating the Gallery Boulevard as that space upon which they want a streetscape. And we are proposing some reworking of that buffer, but it is still going to be visible. So I know the requirement is for that 10-foot buffer, but realistically, it's going to be something you can still see the front of this building from Gallery Boulevard, hopefully.
Okay, I guess the, sort of making it work and people becoming accustomed to the pattern of entering and exiting the sites just seems to me like an approach we would take more often with a reuse or, a redevelopment of an existing facility and existing um, parking configurations or driveways. And I'm sure while there's certainly an element here that's already existing, the bulk of this lot is not. And so I just continue to feel that a reorientation of this building with a main entrance at this corner with a cleaner, redesigned intersection there. I think they would both help each other. That having the main entrance there would also slow people down and be beneficial probably for both uses. I think I know there were pretty extensive staff comments on this, so not to go on too much longer, but it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot in the way of low impact development proposed here for the stormwater treatment. And I realized there was some sort of extensive commenting about the plan for the stormwater from the site in general. Does it go on to the larger pond, or it sounds like your proposal is to treat it more locally, which to me sounds like some low impact techniques would be really beneficial for. So maybe considering that when you come again.
Yep, surely. Yeah. The goal here with treating it as like a local treatment was because just the time trying to think about that old pond to prove out the level of treatment. We know we can meet our treatment here. We'll still discharge to it. So, I mean, that's where that comment comes from. We still need to look at that pond as part of this project to make sure it's brought up to par with what the town expects. I did consider, we looked at some LID measures, specifically some of the curbed areas, right, instead of catch basins. At one time, on that left side there, we had looked at doing something like a focal point or something, a high efficient LID system. The left side there is a little tricky because there's a easement, there's a lot of utilities, and there's some existing conduit. Other than that, there really was only an opportunity on that north side. And it really kind of came down to just trying to simplify the design of the site where there's only 3 catch basins on the entire project. It's a fairly small project. So we're trying to simplify the design. We do have the proprietary jellyfish system, so obviously it meets the state's requirements, but does and will be included in the annual maintenance plan. But I did have some notes on that early on, so I can come back and make some comment on that as well.
Okay, that would be great. I know there's a number of trees that are proposed. Maybe you consider some tree filters or something like that.
We had considered a tree filter. So one thing we could do is look at if adding a tree filter means we can reduce another component in the system because of that reduced treatment load.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Rick?
Thank you. Yeah, I concur with my colleague. The orientation on this, I think maybe we could do a little bit better. I'm not sold on the fact that this is the way we want that to sit in this lot. And I'm not happy with the way the entrance is with the radii and having those landscape areas just as you come in the entrance. I think there can be some work done here to make it more of a traditional looking in and out from this site. So please take a look at that prior to the next submission. Also on your, just change your plans to say that you got a Scarborough fire truck and not a Westbrook fire truck.
Yeah, so that was actually at the time of meeting with staff, was just what I had built in my my system.
Okay.
But I'll follow up with Eric and Autumn and make sure I'm
Good.
getting the right spec on the Scarborough. So.
And I think, the only other thing that I will mention on the lighting is I'd like to see a min average I think you're overlit here, drastically overlit on your parking spot compared to what IES recommends. I realize that sometimes it's nice for branding purposes, but this is no stadium area and we don't need the excessive lights. But overall, I think there's a lot of work to do here. Stormwater management, there's a pretty emphatic note in here that nothing is to be, no additional runoff can be directed into the existing system. So let's see what you can come up with to mitigate some of the stormwater issues right on site.
Yeah, that was an interesting one too, because the way in which we treated this, where I said we kind of looked at it locally, where this is just our kind of treatment, our analysis area. We looked at the pre and the post. So the pre is essentially what it receives now. It's a graveled, grass graveled lot. So by actually proposing our chamber system and our jellyfish currently, so we detain and kind of slowly filter through, we do actually meet what already is being sent there. So, but I think it was the comment we received is part of this. There's been, I know, some maintenance questions.
There's been some issues with that. Yeah.
We've had the fun time of figuring out exactly who holds easements to what and responsibilities for what, but we've kind of been taking the lead on getting some pricing and stuff like that. So we'll confirm all of that with town staff to make sure it addresses their checklists.
That sounds very good. Just a question or a thought I want to throw in your head is that you probably, for this type of building, you probably don't even need to bring in natural gas. There's HVAC systems that you can do heating and cooling and everything by wire instead of by gas. Let's explore that option. Maybe save you money to not bring in that utility, and you can put that money toward a revised layout of your site. And
yeah, I know the prototypical uses gas, but we can ask the question of the tenant if.
Yeah, and realize that we have a comprehensive town plan as well as an energy plan, and we're trying to minimize the carbon footprint as best we can. This is not only the town of Scarborough, but it's the state of Maine's climate action plan. So I would, maybe if you're not familiar with that, it's on the maine.gov website. You can take a look at what the vision is for climate mitigation or mitigation to help us with the issues of climate change.
Sure.
All right. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. My colleagues have pretty much addressed the issues that I have. I will tell you, when I first looked at this, I couldn't figure out where the entrance of the building was. And well, let me take this in order. You've talked about signs for the hard stops. I think on the exit, I don't know, this is the north-south side of the building, but the actual one-way exit going out, you're going to also have to have a sign that says "Do not enter."
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so I encourage you to make sure that you've got enough signs, because people are going to find themselves missing a parking space as they drive in, and then all of a sudden they're going to turn around, or they're going to try and go all the way around the building, find a parking space down below, and then when they leave, they're going to try to turn left again and go in and find a parking space. So you've set up a situation where, and I don't know that you have a choice, but you've set up a situation where if the bank is busy and somebody can't find a spot to park when they first go in, they're going to find themselves trying to circle a building. And when they leave the building, when they leave the lot, they're going to be turning really hard left as other cars may be coming out. So I don't know how you're going to handle that other than being aware of it. Are there EV charging stations here?
Yeah, we're showing, so per the ordinance, we have to show one EV capable, and then I think I'm showing 2 EV ready.
Where are they?
I think that's in the upper right corner of the plan. So the uppermost parking space up in the corner is the EV capable. So that's actually also the closest proximity to our anticipated transformer location.
Okay,
And then we are showing EV ready that actually can be shared between the ADA space and the adjacent space. And then we do have, as you can see, it's not really much further. We could show an additional EV ready, I think, per the staff comments on the one opposite the ADA median.
all right, I'm assuming that the parking spaces down at the bottom, as I'm looking at, I'm on L2, down at the bottom, those are employee parking spaces or geared to be
They would
primarily?
like, yeah, we haven't planned to sign them that way, but they likely, that would be where the bank encourages their employees to park, yep. Being that that door on the south side is also only accessible by employees.
The employees, you may have an employee with an EV. And you might want to take a look at possibly adding an extra EV station down there for the benefit of the employees and not so that they're going to end up taking away something that a customer may use. I think otherwise my colleagues have really outlined the dilemmas that you have here. As Jim was asking about, whether it's Jim or Ben was asking about the number of banks, I started counting, and they're actually 5. So I guess it's good to know that the banking system has got a lot of money to build new buildings. And Scarborough now probably has every single bank out there, we believe. We're just not sure, but we believe we may. But I hope this is going to work out. I hope it's going to work out for you folks. It's a challenging site, and good luck. We
Thank you.
want to, I would look forward to seeing how you're going to handle some of these issues. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, 4.06, Steve Hanscom requests site plan review to construct a 1,010 square foot drive-through coffee shop at 1 Bridges Drive, assessors map R39, lot 24. Eric?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Hanscom's in front of the planning board with a site plan review for Aroma Joe's on Bridges Drive, just past the intersection with Payne Road. This project was previously reviewed by the board in 2019, where the board had quite a bit of traffic and stormwater concerns. Excuse me. That was discussed at length at the time, and this is now a new application for the project that's now proposed. A TMP is currently being pursued through DOT by the applicant, which the town and its traffic engineering peer review team will also be a part of. Staff's also included comment on various B3 zoning district standards, as well as some clarification on the applicant's request for a waiver for installing EV conduit for the board's consideration. So with that, I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant.
Thank you, everyone. Drew Olechowski with Haley Ward, representing the applicant, 1 Bridges Drive LLC. So as Eric mentioned, we did bring this design forward back in 2019. At the time, there was quite a bit of uncertainty with the traffic. Over the past year or so, we have conducted a traffic impact study to allow us to move forward with this project. Last month, on October 4th, we held a scoping meeting with the Maine DOT for the TMP. At this meeting, they requested a few more study areas for this project, so we're working on those. Because we don't have the TMP at hand at this time, we'd like to focus this meeting more on all aspects of this project other than the traffic at this time. We'd like to kind of get anything else ironed out, and then we'll come back when we have the TMP for approval. So a quick overview of this project. It is an Aroma Joe's, pretty classic that I'm sure everyone's seen popping up all over the place. We have approximately 1,000 square foot building, as well as an associated drive-through. The drive-through was designed in accordance with the town's drive-through queuing standards. as well as emergency vehicle access around the building. As far as utilities go, we are proposing to utilize the water service on Payne Road. And then we'll have on-site wastewater disposal over on the left side of the site there. We'll also have overhead electric from Payne Road. As far as stormwater goes, this site is less than an acre in area, so there is no DEP stormwater permitting required. So our goal here was really just to meet the town's flooding standard, mitigating post-development flows to peak development levels. In order to accomplish that, we have used pervious pavement throughout the site. There's a crushed stone reservoir under this pavement that will help to detain that storm water and then release it as a controlled flow out to the wetlands on the north side of the site. We have gone through several iterations of peer review and staff comments. At this time, we don't believe that any of them are really red flags at this point. I think they can all be addressed fairly easily. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to the board, just get the discussion going of any major comments you guys might have for us.
Thank you. Item is subject to public comment. I will note that we have received a letter from Denise Hamilton expressing her concerns. That letter will be part of the permanent record. Is there anybody? Nobody in the room with a comment? Is there anybody online? No one is online. In that case, public comment period is over, and let me turn this over to the board, not in any particular order. Who wants to go first? Ben?
I don't know if this qualifies under traffic or not. The bike rack and the walk-up entrance, and the fact that you're proposing nine spaces, not 10. I'm kind of wondering, aren't people going to try and bypass the line in a busy time to park, then use the walk-up entrance? So you get a parking spaces, or aren't people gonna, how are you gonna get a bike to the bike rack with all the drive-through going on? That's kind of where I'm.
So as far as the walk-up window goes, that's mainly for people who've ordered ahead using an online app or a food delivery service type app. So they would park in those parking spaces and then just walk up to the window.
So it's walk up and pick up only generally?
Yeah, just pick
Not,
up orders.
not, you're not ordering there.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, so yeah, I don't think the situation of trying to race ahead of the line would be the case here.
Okay. What about the bike rack? How does somebody get there? Is that?
This facility is definitely intended just more for vehicle traffic. The bike rack was something we added with the latest iteration of staff comments. At the recent Maine DOT scoping meeting, it was identified by town staff that there are no pedestrian or bicycle accommodations in this area, and none are proposed at this time. So it is unlikely that bike rack will be used, but we have shown it in the odd case that someone does want to bike to a coffee shop.
Okay.
And that also,
Go ahead.
there was one other town comment I forgot to address, the issue of having sidewalks along the frontage of this property. As I mentioned, there is no plans by the town or goals of the town to propose pedestrian facilities in this area. So for that reason, we wouldn't be proposing any sidewalks along our frontage. The town did note that we would have to contribute to a multimodal fund in lieu of having that sidewalk. And we did have a question on whether that fund would be used for sidewalks other places in town, or if that would be just for this one property specifically, if those were to ever take place. So I think we'd like that clarified if possible.
Multimodal fund is used for the entire town.
Okay.
I guess I would like to see sort of some figures of maybe other Roma Joes that talk about sort of the volume of the walk up versus drive-through traffic that they might get in similar types of areas, just so we can make sure that, with you can have quite a few spaces taken up by employees. If you have people doing a bunch of DoorDash or whatever, I'm worried about the parking spaces running out quickly. So I'd be more comfortable if I could just see maybe some, we get 2 an hour or we get, 2 every 5 minutes. kind of
Okay,
thing.
yeah, we can look into
See what I
that.
mean? Yeah. Okay, I'm really, there's a lot of comments that, you still have to work through, and I know you know that, but major red flags other than the bike rack and stuff is not, I haven't seen anything else, so. I think that's all that I have for now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Who wants to be next? Roger.
Thank you. If I recall, when this was before the board previously, one of the issues was there's a dramatic drop, right, drop right between Bridge Drive and the drive-through. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
And so you're gonna be reinforcing the drive around there?
We do propose, I believe it's 3-to-1 slopes all around the driveway, which
Okay.
are typical for safety. I think we do also have a guardrail along that outer edge as well for vehicle safety.
Okay. The other thing I would mention to you is, recommend, when this was before the board, we also were looking at a similar site, another Roma Joe's up in North Scarborough. And we spent an awful lot of time on the building. So if this design is not exactly like that one, I would recommend you take a look at that one. Because I think you're gonna find out we're gonna end up having you do something like that. So, and the other thing I want to bring up is, we also had an issue with a sign, the pylon sign, do you recall that? Because it's a white background sign. And I haven't seen that property at night, but if I recall, they told us that there was technology that we can somehow change the lighting on the background. Are you familiar with that?
Are you referring to the site on Saco Street and County Road?
No, yes, yeah.
Yep, yeah, we can make sure the signs meet all the same standards that one did.
That it changes color though.
I'm not specifically aware of that, but I can look into it.
Okay. I think the other big issue was the stormwater and that, but I think to my way of thinking back of when this was before us, of course we don't want to talk about traffic, so I won't bring it up. But those were the I know I'm going back to the North Scarborough deliberations, and it was a sign and the building. And I think the building is different than the one you have presented to us, so that's why I'm suggesting you take a look at that.
I can definitely look back at the old issues that were brought up, just make sure we account for those here too.
Were you working on that one?
I was briefly at the very end.
Okay, all right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in here briefly because I had asked Eric to take a look at the North Scarborough building to see, because we spent so much time on it, to see if there was any difference or anything that we should be concerned about, or was the franchisee really following the
I think one of those included the actual height of the building.
well, the North Scarborough building was about 25 feet high, and this one, I believe, is 17.5 feet high.
Well,
And
we wanted the one in Scarborough, in North Scarborough to be lower.
Well,
We went
yes.
along with that.
And this is now,
Is that the same height? Okay.
this is lower. This is lower than the North Scarborough, so we don't want it 100% like North Scarborough.
Right.
We like the lower. So as you're looking, keep in mind, we like the lower. Okay, I just wanted to follow up because I had asked a similar question, so I asked for some research on that. That's what I found out. Okay, who wants to say something? I'll finish up.
Okay, okay, great. I'm looking forward to your memory because I'm looking at this site plan. My memory is, I definitely can't remember like what was what from which site. Not just for the building, but actually particularly for stormwater. I'm curious if, and maybe you glossed over or went over this in your presentation, but there's no requirement for treatment here?
No, there's not, because we are under an acre of disturbed area, so there's no DEP permitting required. And the only town standard is the flooding standard.
Can we require treatment? I don't know. It's just an incredibly close to a very large body of wetlands. And with the whole site draining directly to the wetland with no treatment, I'm rapidly approaching the limit of my knowledge area here. But I don't know. I would be then particularly interested in what sort of long-term maintenance you're gonna do here. So if this is indeed fully pervious pavement, are you you're not using sand presumably, because that would clog that system? So are you then using solely salt, which is probably a problem this close to the wetland? I think just some additional information for the board on how we are going to ensure that this site doesn't pollute this area would be helpful. In a pretty common term, layman's term kind of ways. I couldn't remember if this was the site that we had talked about lining like a full. Okay,
That was North
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Pretty significant option for the site, but it was kind of a big deal for whoever's site it was. Thank you. Okay, and then so yeah, I get the stormwater is sort of the biggest non-traffic comments that I have. I would generally, I think, support the notion of an in lieu fee payment into the town's multimodal account in place of sidewalks or bike facilities on this site. However, I think, and I say this aside from the development program, I understand that this particular coffee shop is very specific in its development programs and the type of clientele and like the method that these people get to the site is very vehicularly centered. But coffee shops notoriously have like the highest trip generation rates of, actually, I would like to look at that. I'm not sure. It's at the top of the list, in terms of traffic generators. And I know that that's an item that was, what our public comment was on today, not the TMP process per se, but just a general note about the increase of traffic in this area. And one of the ways to mitigate that is to encourage non-vehicular travel to and from your site, of which bike and pedestrian facilities are a great way to do that. Payne Road is sort of a scary place. And obviously, yes, the town does not have plans at this time to add that type of those types of facilities to this location. But, given the proximity here to the rest of the Downs development, which is generally being developed as a pretty walkable and bikeable in particular area, I think it's a little unfortunate that we can't somehow make some safer connections to the site, but there are some pretty big pieces missing in between. And so I think that an in lieu fee payment would allow the town to address some of those larger missing links elsewhere in town, or perhaps, even actually not all that far away from your site, like the Holmes Downs Road intersection, something like that in the future. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Monking.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I think I already blended in some of my comments and sprinkled it in, but yeah, without being able to talk about traffic, this seems like another cookie cutter kind of project. I would hope that we can do something with are you gonna have a grease trap in here?
There is, yep.
Yeah, so that was the other reason why in the North Scarborough, we wanted some sort of mitigation on that. So I would definitely take a look at how you're going to address that. But that's all I have at this point.
Yeah, Jim.
And for me, I'm new just 11 months ago, so I wasn't part of the initial presentation with related to the site, and I'll try to do my best to avoid talking about traffic. But as a resident,
Don't worry about it. I am going to talk about traffic. Go
okay.
ahead.
As someone who lives less than 2 miles away, I take this very road every single day on my way home because I can't access it from Payne Road because of the median that's there. I know a lot of the presentation that when this was first brought in, a lot of the road changes weren't done to Payne Road yet. Costco was not opened, and Costco just opened this past weekend, and the impact was sort of black and white, very significant immediately. And I love Aroma Joe's. I've been many times. I think you guys make a great product, truly. My personal opinion. But I don't know if this is the real best location for you folks. The access to Bridges Road from Payne Road it's impossible when you're going towards the center of South Portland because you can't get there from there. You can't get there from here because you don't have that, the median in the road prevents you from doing so. It has not stopped people from attempting to do so that I have witnessed myself and just seen it in front of me. And promulgating this, having this here is an amazingly attractive spot for people to go to. I think would just really pose a danger for it. And TMP aside, I would have serious reservations about this particular location for this very high traffic spot when Bridges Road is not meant for high traffic. It was mentioned in the public letter as well. And then I'll reinforce again because I drive this road every day. The road is in awful shape. That's just the way the road is in this area, and to increase the amount of traffic that this particular location would generate on it, I think would be pretty devastating to this particular area. Because if you're leaving Aroma Joe's and you take a right, because you need to go back towards Cabela's or I-95, you need to take a left onto Holmes Road. And taking a left onto Holmes Road from Payne Road is very tricky when you have the overpass on your right. That's a blind spot and people are just ripping straight across it. Add into the fact we're now, and based on our meeting last month, we're looking at a potential trucking distribution center at the Beach Ridge Motor Speedway, and the amount of volume of 18-wheelers that will generate coming down Holmes Road using this very road on Payne Road side down Holmes Road to Payne Road to I-95. And now imagine the trips in the morning with those morning truckers trying to get out to make their runs early in the morning with a heavy amount of traffic coming from a coffee shop, trying to make a left-hand turn onto Holmes Road. People are going to be jumping out in front of each other, and it's really another disaster waiting to happen. And again, all respect, I love Aroma Joe's. You guys make great coffee. I just don't know if this is the really best location for this site. There are a lot of factors here and again, the TMP may address this. TMP may take into account that Costco's across the street. There's a median in the middle of Payne Road preventing a left-hand turn onto Bridges Road. Costco, the TMP doesn't know that there's a heavy trucking facility with hundreds of tractor trailer trucks that's going to be going in a mile down the road that's going to be using Holmes Road, going past this every single day. I don't know if that's going to be taken into account on it, and it certainly should be, whether or not the board approves this trucking distribution facility that's going to be there. And I don't mean to bleed applications, I apologize, but since it was discussed in a public meeting, I feel like we can talk about it, at least notionally. People are bypassing and cheating the Payne Road median by crossing over, and it's caused serious accidents in there. I understand how we can't have an entry onto Payne Road. That would be ideal, but just the grade change there is really just prevents you from doing so, which is unfortunate because I think that would be a really good solution here. You would have an in and you would have an out, and people could go and leave on the Payne Road side to go to 95 if they have to, but there isn't a real physical way that you can do that. If I were king for a day, I would have you talk to the Beach Ridge folks and see what's going on across the street from them for a spot down there, but that's for a separate story. That I'm not king for a day. That's my biggest concern on this site. I mean, I think you guys have a really well put together business plan. You're successful everywhere you go. The North County Road location, I'll take it as an example, that is just full of cars every single day. It's doing very well. And I have no doubt that this place would be financially successful as well either. But for the town in this particular area, given all that's going on here, and the Downs isn't finished yet. We still don't have all the rest of the residents who are moved in. That is going to be increasing the volume at the Holmes Road, Payne Road intersection. It gives me great reservation to put in another high traffic use facility here. And I'll just leave my general comments to that. I apologize if I don't have any questions for you. Again, nothing but respect. Thank you.
Thank you. And you said a chunk of what I wanted to say. But I'll talk to you later about that. I guess when the median went in along Payne Road, I kind of noticed consistently all of the wheel marks of cars that dug down into the dirt to cross over the median. And thought to myself, boy, that's going to be a problem. And the problem now is what's faced by the exit of Bridge Road, or the intersection of Bridge Road and Payne Road, because now the only place to go coming from Bridge Road onto Payne Road is right. Unless you decide to try, and just cut right across the median, which is a smaller median, a narrower median at that point. So some people are going to figure they can make it. So I don't know what is going to happen with the TMP. I would suspect at a minimum, what's going to be important is for there to be some sort of a barrier, an island at the intersection of Payne and Bridges that forces people only to go to the right. Which means that those people who want to go to the left on Payne Road, go north, are going to need some directions on your site. Some sort of wayfaring on your site itself that says Payne Road south, go to the left, Payne Road north, go up to Holmes Road, and then out onto Payne Road. There's got to be something that provides them with directions. Otherwise, they're going to get down to the intersection the first couple of times until they realize they can't do that. Find themselves heading in the wrong direction and then trying to figure out how to turn around in a high traffic area. So I think that is going to be a problem. Obviously, a driveway or an exit right onto Payne Road would be wonderful, but I'm not sure how far that median goes, and that itself might not be possible. All I can do is wish you good luck. I agree, you put out a great product. A lot of people are going to want to have their cup of coffee in the morning on the way to work. But I do think you've got your work really cut out for you in terms of the access and the traffic. And I don't have a lot of things that I can say that can provide you comfort. It simply is that way. Wasn't in 2019, is that way now. And that does create a problem for you. I hope all of these issues can be worked through with the staff. And I hopefully will be able to welcome you into Scarborough at this location. So I look forward to the next time you come to us with some wonderful solutions and a way to make this work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wait a minute, Roger.
Yeah, if I may, you know, if you, I don't know if you, when you were working on this project before, we did have extensive discussions about the traffic. And that was before the island on Payne Road. And we were talking about Wayfair signs and everything to try and redirect it. But that was even before what Jim was talking about now, the big development going up at Beach Ridge. So, but it may behoove you just to take a look at what, if you can get access to what we discussed before. Because of, we spent a lot of time on this.
Yeah,
on this
I'll look
one.
into it.
Yeah.
Yes, and look into the architecture in northern Scarborough. Just remember, we like the lower building. I'll say that a few times. There, and to take a look at, please work with the planning department on the signage. That's also the lighting keeps changing. So yeah, lighting standards. So make sure that that's all set.
Not Scarborough one? No, different franchise.
So I hope we can welcome you. As I said, I think you got your work cut out for you there with what's come over the last couple of years. So thank you.
Thank you.
Staff report.
Thank you. So in terms of projects that are going to be starting up here pretty soon, we did just have a pre-construction meeting with Maine Vet for their parking expansion. It sounds like with the pavement plants closed that they might not be starting that until the weather warms up a little bit, but you might start to see clearing in that area coming up here. In terms of certificates of occupancy, the obvious one is Costco on Friday, which opened, as well as Hackmore Apartments 2. Those are now occupied at the Downs. All the landscaping was installed probably in the last week or two. And then the former Cliffs building at 370 Route 1, which was approved for the 2-tenant sort of cafe space on that section of Route 1. They just finished their paving and their striping as well as most of their landscaping. So we'll be out inspecting that soon and we'll be expecting a CO shortly thereafter, I think. So quite a bit happening. I don't know, Autumn, if you have any other updates for the board.
Thank you. Minor development reviews.
We have two since the last planning board meeting. One was at the Hackmore Apartments 2. I don't remember voting on it. That was fairly minor. And then DPR at the Downs along Center Street. They had previously installed some mountable curb and since corrected that to now include some bollards to prevent truck turning movements. Sorry, they've since included that to, they've installed some bollards where there were previously mountable curbs, so there are now bollards there. So those are the two. Those I don't know what I just said, but those are the two minor development reviews we've seen. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just move on. 5.02 Administrative Amendment Report.
I'll try and do better with this one. So we have been fairly busy with administrative amendments. Dunstan Tap and Table has now opened their building addition, and the island that was shown for the newly installed parking spaces adjacent to the field was never installed. So they're now requesting that be updated in the as-built condition to no island, as well as some lighting changes there. So those are to be approved shortly as soon as we receive the updated plan. Chase Bank relocated their sign just behind the former Wendy's sign. So it only moved a few feet. It's a very small change. Jocelyn Place down off of Route 1, they requested to install a shed to store some, I think, lawn furniture, maintenance equipment, things like that. And then probably one of the more notable changes in town is the closure of the Christmas tree shops. We did receive a site plan application for a tenant to kind of retrofit that building. They're going to be doing a lot of interior work as part of that. But the exterior essentially remains the same, short of a small pickup area. So with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And just so the board knows, especially the newer members, when something comes to the planning department, whether it's a minor development review or administrative amendment of some sort, routinely I am contacted and I take a look at all of the changes that have been proposed and make a judgment as to whether it's something that the staff can handle or that it should come to the board. And in most cases, what I've seen is it's relatively minor. There have been a few times, very few times that I've said, no, it's got to come to the planning board. But basically, it's frequently a case of moving 4 feet over this direction or adding something in the back that's not going to be seen, that we would routinely agree to anyhow. So that's how that works. It's not just that the staff is making those decisions. I do get the phone call. And I take a look at what the plans are and what the proposed changes are and make a decision and advise the staff at that point. 6.01 correspondence.
None at this time.
Thank you. 6.02 planning board comments. Roger?
Two comments, one's a question. I've noticed recently that jellyfish, is that new technology or something? Because I don't recall seeing that popping up.
They actually put jellyfish.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. It's spawning ground.
I'm not sure if it's new or it's just gaining in popularity and it's being used more. Angela could probably give you a better answer.
Okay. Then the only other thing I just wanted to mention is, I was, looking at a sales receipt today from, Costco. And they have the street address correct. I don't know how critical this is. They have the street address correct, but it says South Portland. So I don't know if. Take care of that. Eric can take.
Yes,
We
because
get
the
tax
question,
revenue.
the question becomes, where does the tax go? Where does the tax go to? Interesting. Yeah, I've got one at home, so I'll double check that.
Check it out.
Other planning board comments? Anything? No, my suspicions are we are going to start seeing more interfacing with the Conservation Commission. They have more and more of an interest as we go to, as the town moves towards 3030, to decisions we might make or program applications that we're looking at where there might be the opportunity for some land to be conserved. So I think that's sort of integration of systems is positive. They do have some good ideas. They have an expertise in some areas that we simply don't. So my conversations have been essentially, folks, if you have something, please send us comment as the Conservation Commission, so that we will understand that it's coming from a town committee that has had a good opportunity to take a look at an issue. If somebody on the Conservation Commission has an individual concern, come to us as a member of the public and speak up. Again, we welcome the feedback on these issues, especially with something as important as the conservation. And just as a follow-up, a few years ago, we as a board approved a conservation subdivision next to the Trapper John subdivision. And that's out on Broad Turn and Hanson Road. And as a result of that approval, the new conservation subdivision may set aside a lot of its open space in a way that connected with the with the Trapper John. The land trust purchased land on the other side of that conservation subdivision. And I just can't, it was on Hanson Road and has come before the Parks and Conservation Land Board. And the Parks and Conservation Land Board has agreed to recommend that there be an additional purchase of land along Hanson Road that now connects 4 pieces of property conserved. So that's really, the planning board had its share there, working with that conservation subdivision, also working at Trapper John, and now with the land trust to really create a pretty extensive acreage of conserved land out in the west.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
All right. I think it's laudable that goal 30-30. But the only, when I first read about it, one thing that struck me was during the comp plan, one of the issues that came up was the lack of connectivity with streets and roads in this town. We have a lot of dead end roads. And I think we should, be aware of that going forward as we try and conserve as much land as possible.
Yeah, and I believe we had that property that came up off of Pine Point Road and asked that question, the very question, is there the ability to connect?
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, but it should be a question that we keep asking, that we keep exploring.
Yeah, we actually had a development off of Two Rod Road that they could not connect to another development. And in fact, that was primarily because of a covenants that the other development had. They wouldn't, going forward. But I think we should be aware of that because that's an expense to the town when you have all these one-way, dead end roads. So.
All right. Hearing, sensing that we are all tired and done, do I hear a motion?
You sure do.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Sure
Somebody.
does.
Sure does, all right. Do I hear any objection?
Certainly not.
In that case, we're adjourned.